Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1. From the outside, the house looked abandoned, shutters falling, vines creeping up the sides. But inside, the living room had been preserved with care. The only anomaly was the wallpaper. It wasn't floral or patterned. It was lined, strand by strand, with human hair. All the same color, all the same length. When Sheriff's Deputy Elaine Mercer first stepped into the small ranch-style home at 347 Oak Ridge Drive in Millfield, Montana, she thought it might be a simple wellness check gone strange. The neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, hadn't seen the homeowner, 56-year-old Arthur Pendleton, in 17 days. His mail was piling up. His car, a faded blue 1994 Ford Taurus, remained unmoved in the driveway, collecting pollen from the cottonwood trees that lined the quiet suburban street. What they found inside would haunt Millfield for decades to come. Arthur Pendleton had lived in Millfield his entire life. Born to local schoolteacher Marion Pendleton and her husband George, a carpenter at the lumber mill, Arthur was remembered by former classmates as unremarkable but pleasant. He had graduated from Millfield High School in 1986, attended the local community college for 2 semesters, then dropped out to work at his father's carpentry business. When George passed away in 2003, Arthur inherited both the business and the house. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, and always willing to help with small repairs. He never married. His mother passed away in 2012, leaving Arthur entirely alone. He was just there, recalled Linda Howard, who lived 3 houses down. The kind of neighbor who waved but never stopped to chat. I don't think anyone really knew him, not in any meaningful way. The morning that Mrs. Donnelly called the police, it was unseasonably cold for April. A light frost covered the lawn as Deputy Mercer and her partner, Deputy James Collins, approached the Pendleton home. They knocked several times before trying the door, which swung open easily, unlocked. "Hello, Mr. Pendleton, Sheriff's Department," called Deputy Collins. No response came from within the dimly lit interior. The first thing they noticed was the smell, not of decay, as they initially feared, but of chemicals. Wood preservatives, glue, varnish. The kind of smells one might associate with a hobby workshop, but there was something else underneath, something metallic and faintly sweet. The living room appeared normal at first glance. A worn brown sofa, a television from the early 2000s, landscape paintings that looked like they'd been purchased at a motel liquidation sale. But as Deputy Mercer's eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the half-closed blinds, she noticed the walls. It looked like textured wallpaper from a distance, she would later testify. Then I realized what I was looking at: human hair. Thousands upon thousands of strands meticulously glued to the walls in perfect vertical lines, all auburn, all exactly 17 inches long. The hair covered every wall in the living room, arranged in straight lines spaced precisely 1 inch apart. Each strand had been individually placed, creating a macabre display that must have taken hundreds of hours to complete. There was no sign of Arthur Pendleton. In the kitchen, they found his breakfast dishes still in the sink, a cereal bowl and coffee mug, both rinsed but not washed. The refrigerator contained fresh food, including a half-gallon of milk that hadn't yet expired. His wallet sat on the counter, containing $43 in cash and all his identification cards. The investigation expanded quickly. State police were called in. Forensic specialists photographed and sampled the hair on the walls. Initial analysis confirmed what investigators feared. It was human hair, all from the same person. DNA testing was ordered, but results would take weeks. The basement door was found locked from the inside. When officers broke it down, they discovered Arthur's workshop, immaculately organized with carpentry tools hanging on pegboards and jars of various adhesives lined up on shelves. In the center of the room stood a large wooden table, its surface stained dark in places. Beside it, a chair with leather straps attached to the arms and legs. And in the corner, a freezer. Detective Lydia Ramirez, who led the investigation, hesitated before opening it. Inside were dozens of carefully labeled plastic containers. Each one held the same contents: auburn hair, bundled and preserved. The level of organization was disturbing, Detective Ramirez noted in her report. Each container was dated, going back 15 years. A search of Arthur's bedroom revealed nothing unusual. A neatly made bed, clothes folded in drawers, a nightstand with a well-thumbed paperback mystery novel. But in his mother's bedroom, which appeared untouched since her death, they found something unexpected: hundreds of photographs of the same woman. The woman wasn't Marion Pendleton. She was younger, perhaps in her early 30s, with long auburn hair. None of the neighbors could identify her. The investigation expanded to include missing persons reports from surrounding counties. Dental records were checked against unidentified remains. Arthur's phone records and financial history were scrutinized. His internet search history revealed repeated visits to social media profiles belonging to women with long auburn hair, but nothing explicitly incriminating. 3 weeks into the investigation, with Arthur Pendleton still missing, the DNA results came back. The hair belonged to multiple individuals, all female, all related, sisters perhaps, or mother and daughter. It was Detective Ramirez who made the connection. There had been a case 20 years earlier before she joined the force. The Camden sisters, Sarah and Emily, had disappeared while driving through Montana on their way to Seattle. Their car had been found abandoned at a rest stop 2 counties over. Both had auburn hair. The case had gone cold decades ago. When investigators returned to Arthur's house with cadaver dogs, they made another discovery. In the backyard beneath the shed where Arthur kept his gardening tools, the ground had been disturbed. Excavation revealed no bodies, but rather a collection of small wooden boxes, each containing a single preserved finger, 12 in total. DNA analysis would later confirm they belonged to 6 different women, including the Camden sisters. Arthur Pendleton's vehicle was finally located at a long-term parking lot near the Missoula airport. Security footage showed him entering the terminal carrying a single suitcase, but no record existed of him boarding any flight. His passport had never been used. The case took another turn when investigators found a hidden compartment in Arthur's workshop. Inside was a handwritten journal detailing his collection process in clinical, emotionless language. The journal revealed a methodical predator who had been operating undetected for nearly 2 decades, targeting women with a specific hair color and length across multiple states. "They become permanent this way," one entry read. "Mother always said beautiful things should be preserved." The most disturbing revelation came from the final pages of the journal. Arthur had become aware of the investigation. He had watched from a distance as police cars gathered at his home, and he had made a decision. "They won't find me where I'm going," he wrote, "but I'll find others. There are always more women with beautiful hair, and I've gotten very good at what I do." 6 months after the initial wellness check, the active search for Arthur Pendleton was scaled back. His case was added to the FBI's most wanted list, with a warning that he should be considered armed and extremely dangerous. In Millfield, the Pendleton house remained empty, a silent monument to the horrors it had contained. Locals avoided walking past it. Parents warned their children to stay away. Eventually, the city council voted to have it demolished. The night before demolition was scheduled, the contractor doing a final walkthrough made a grisly discovery in the attic, a space that had somehow been overlooked in the initial investigation. Hidden behind a false wall was a small room containing thousands of photographs. Women shopping at grocery stores, women walking dogs in parks, women sitting in cafes, all with auburn hair, all unaware they were being watched. And in the center of the room, a single chair and a collection of scissors, combs, and razors laid out with obsessive precision. To this day, Arthur Pendleton remains at large. The FBI has received reported sightings from as far away as Alaska and Florida, but none have been confirmed. Occasionally, a case emerges that bears his signature, a missing woman with auburn hair, little evidence, no witnesses. For the families of his known victims, there is no closure, only questions. For the investigators who work the case, there are sleepless nights, haunted by the memory of that quiet house with its walls lined with hair, and the knowledge that somewhere Arthur Pendleton might be creating another collection. In small towns across America, women with auburn hair sometimes report feeling watched, a sensation of eyes following them through crowded streets or empty parking lots. Most dismiss it as paranoia, an overactive imagination sparked by reading too many true crime stories. But Detective Ramirez, now retired, offers different advice. If you ever feel like you're being watched, trust your instincts, and if you have long auburn hair, maybe consider cutting it short. Crime 2, she found them tucked behind a loose panel in the attic, envelopes yellowed with age, each sealed and carefully labeled. They were written in her handwriting, signed with her name, but she had no memory of writing any of them, and the content suggested she had known exactly what would happen to her. Rebecca Adler had always been the stable one. Growing up in the small town of Millfield, Connecticut, she was known for her reliability and quiet intelligence. Her childhood home, a Victorian house on Maple Street with wraparound porches and intricate woodwork, had been in her family for generations. After her parents passed away within months of each other in 2018, Rebecca, then 33, moved back into the family home. Neighbors described her as pleasant but reserved, often seen tending to her garden or walking to her job at the local library where she worked as an archivist. She was the kind of person who faded into the background, said Elaine Mercer, who lived across the street. Not in a bad way, just she was comfortable with silence. Sometimes I'd look out my window and see her sitting on that porch swing for hours, just watching the neighborhood, taking it all in. Rebecca's routine rarely varied. Weekday mornings she left at 7:45 for her walk to the library. Evenings she would return home at 5:30, often carrying a new book. Weekends were for gardening, occasional trips to visit her sister in Boston, and attending community events. Nothing about her life suggested anything unusual, until that Thursday in April when she didn't show up for work. Marjorie Denton, head librarian and Rebecca's supervisor for 8 years, called the police when Rebecca hadn't arrived by 9:30 and wasn't answering her phone, something completely out of character. Rebecca was never late, not once in 8 years, Marjorie would later tell detectives. She was our timekeeper. You could set your watch by her comings and goings. Officer Paul Ramirez was first to arrive at the Adler home at 10:15 that morning. The front door was locked. Rebecca's car was in the driveway. There were no signs of forced entry. When knocks went unanswered, he peered through windows and saw nothing amiss. Neighbors confirmed they hadn't seen Rebecca that morning, but reported no unusual activity around the house. With reasonable concern for her welfare, Officer Ramirez called for backup. They entered through an unlocked back door that led to the kitchen. Everything appeared normal: clean dishes in the drying rack, a half-empty mug of tea on the counter, Rebecca's phone charging next to it. Her purse and keys were there too. The officers conducted a sweep of the main floor, finding nothing unusual. The basement revealed only storage and an old laundry setup. It was when they reached the second floor that the first unsettling details emerged. Rebecca's bed was made, but on top lay clothes apparently set out for the day: a blue cardigan, black slacks, and undergarments. Her reading glasses sat folded on her nightstand, alongside a book marked at page 187. In the bathroom, a damp towel hung neatly on the rack. All signs pointed to someone who had showered and was preparing for a normal day. It looked like she had vanished mid-routine, Officer Ramirez noted in his report, like she'd stepped out of the shower and then just disappeared. It was Detective Sofia Martinez who discovered the attic access in the hallway ceiling. The pull-down ladder had been extended, unusual for a weekday morning. What they found in the attic would transform a missing persons case into something far more disturbing. The space was mostly filled with the expected boxes and trunks of family memorabilia, but in the far corner, a wood panel along the wall had been removed and set aside. Behind it was a small cavity containing 17 envelopes, arranged chronologically by date. The oldest was marked 6 years earlier. The most recent was dated the previous day. Each envelope bore the same inscription: "To Rebecca Adler from Rebecca Adler." All were sealed except the most recent one. Detective Martinez, wearing gloves, carefully opened the first envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, unmistakably in Rebecca's neat, precise handwriting, according to Marjorie, who later confirmed it. The letter began, "Dear Rebecca, when you find these letters, and you will, you'll have no memory of writing them. That's intentional. You can't know what I know and remain safe. These are the things you've discovered, the things you've forgotten, the things you'll need when the time comes." The letter continued with specific details about Rebecca's life that seemed innocuous: her daily routines, observations about neighbors, notes about recurring dreams. But the final paragraph read, "Remember that recurring nightmare about the attic. It's not just a dream. Check behind the northwest corner panel. That's where it started." The investigation quickly expanded. Forensic teams examined the house, finding no signs of struggle or evidence of an intruder. Rebecca's computer and personal journals revealed nothing unusual. Her financial records showed stability: modest income, regular expenses, no large withdrawals or deposits. Her medical records indicated she was in good health, though she had been prescribed sleep aids 2 years prior for occasional insomnia. The contents of the subsequent letters painted a disturbing picture. In them, Rebecca detailed a growing suspicion that someone was entering her home while she slept. Small things moved out of place. The feeling of being watched, strange sounds from the attic at night. In the 9th letter, dated 3 years prior, she wrote, "I've set up a camera. If I'm right, I'll have proof tomorrow. If you're reading this and don't remember, then something has gone very wrong." But there was no camera found in the house. No footage stored on her computer or cloud accounts. The 13th letter contained a photograph: Rebecca sleeping in her bed, taken from the doorway of her room. On the back, written in what appeared to be her handwriting, "This is how he sees you." Detective Martinez established a timeline. Rebecca had been seen by neighbors returning home the evening before her disappearance. Her last digital footprint was an email sent to her sister at 9:48 p.m. Looking forward to your visit next month. Found some old family photos you might want to see. The most recent letter, the only unsealed one, contained just 5 words. He knows that I remember. As days passed without a trace of Rebecca, investigators followed every lead. They questioned former boyfriends few and long ago, co-workers who universally described her as private but kind, and neighbors who had noticed nothing unusual. They examined town records related to the house, discovering that before Rebecca's parents, the home had belonged to her mother's uncle, Edward Whitley, who died in 1975. 3 weeks into the investigation, Rebecca's sister Margaret provided a crucial detail. During childhood visits to the house, their great uncle Edward had forbidden the girls from entering the attic. He was obsessive about it, Margaret recalled. Once Rebecca snuck up there anyway. She was maybe 7. Uncle Edward was, well, I'd never seen an adult so angry. Rebecca had nightmares about the attic for years afterward. Property records revealed numerous renovations to the house over decades, including some apparently done without permits shortly before Edward Whitley's death. Investigators brought in ground-penetrating radar to examine the attic floor and walls. Behind the same panel where the letters were found, they discovered a small hidden room, roughly 6 by 8 feet, invisible from the main attic space. Inside was a cot, a desk with an old journal, and dozens of photographs spanning decades, all of women sleeping. Some photos dated back to the 1960s. The most recent ones were of Rebecca. The journal belonged to Edward Whitley. In it, he detailed his belief that he could separate his consciousness, creating a second self that could move independently while his primary self slept. He documented experiments with this other self, which he claimed could influence the dreams and thoughts of others in the house. Most disturbing were his notes about his grandniece. Young Rebecca is receptive. Her mind opens easily. When she sleeps, I can place thoughts there that she believes are her own. When I'm gone, this ability will remain in the house. The separation between dreamer and watcher will continue. In the final weeks of the investigation, 2 key pieces of evidence emerged. First, DNA testing on the sealed envelopes matched Rebecca's, confirming she had indeed written the letters herself. Second, security footage from a gas station 3 miles away captured Rebecca at 4:17 a.m. on the morning of her disappearance. She appeared disoriented, wearing only a nightgown despite the cool spring air. She purchased nothing, asked no questions, and walked out, heading north on foot. The attendant working alone that night hadn't thought to report it. Despite extensive searches, including dragging the small lake north of town, Rebecca Adler was never found. The case remains officially open but inactive. Margaret Adler sold the house 6 months later. The new owners reported no unusual experiences, though they did mention occasionally hearing footsteps in the attic at night, likely just the old house settling, they reasoned. 2 years after Rebecca's disappearance, Margaret received an unmarked envelope containing a single photograph. A woman resembling Rebecca, sitting on a park bench in another town, reading a book. The image was blurry, taken from a distance. On the back, in handwriting that could have been Rebecca's, were the words, "Sometimes forgetting is the only way to remember." Authorities could neither confirm the photo's authenticity nor locate the park where it was taken. The final theory in the official case file suggests that Rebecca, possibly suffering from an undiagnosed dissociative disorder triggered by childhood trauma in that house, may have created an elaborate narrative before deliberately disappearing. But for those familiar with the letters and what was found in that hidden attic room, questions remain about what Rebecca really knew, what she had discovered in the months before she vanished, and whether she had actually been writing those letters to herself all along, or if something else in that old house on Maple Street had been guiding her hand. Crime 3, the floor was bare, just dust and old boards, but above, on the ceiling, a bed frame had been bolted upside down. The mattress was stained, indented in the shape of a body. One investigator noted a pillow still in place, torn down the middle with a lock of hair tied inside a knot. Detective Martin Reeves had been with the Vermont State Police for 17 years, but nothing in his career had prepared him for what they found in the abandoned Ellis farmhouse that cold March morning in 2018. The call had come in from a land surveyor who'd been hired to assess the property that had sat vacant for nearly 8 months. What should have been a routine examination of an old country home turned into something that would haunt the small town of Westfield for years to come. Abigail Ellis had been known in town as a quiet woman who kept to herself. 42 years old, she had inherited the farmhouse from her parents who died in a car accident when she was 35. Neighbors described her as reserved but pleasant, always offering a soft good morning when encountered at Mason's General Store, where she would buy groceries once every 2 weeks like clockwork. She worked remotely as a medical transcriptionist, a job that suited her solitary nature. Her only regular visitor was her younger sister, Claire, who lived about 40 minutes away in Burlington. Claire last saw Abigail on September 12, 2017. According to her statement to police, it had been a normal visit. They'd shared tea, talked about Claire's children, and discussed renovating the farmhouse's outdated kitchen. When Claire left around 4:30 that afternoon, Abigail was sitting at her desk, headphones on, transcribing medical records as usual. 3 days later, Claire received a text message from Abigail's phone, "Need some time away. Going to stay with old college friend in New Hampshire for a few weeks. Cell service might be spotty, don't worry." It wasn't entirely out of character for Abigail to withdraw occasionally. Since her divorce 5 years earlier, she had periods where she would take solo trips, usually to hiking destinations or quiet coastal towns in Maine. Claire thought nothing of it at first. Weeks passed, texts to Abigail went unanswered, calls went straight to voicemail. By mid-October, Claire drove to the farmhouse. She found it locked, Abigail's car gone from the gravel driveway. The mailbox was stuffed with nearly a month's worth of mail. Claire filed a missing persons report that day. Police investigation revealed that Abigail's cell phone had not been used since that text message to Claire. Her bank accounts showed no activity after September 14th. Her car, a 2010 gray Toyota Corolla, was nowhere to be found. Investigators questioned acquaintances, former colleagues, even her ex-husband, Daniel, who had since remarried and moved to Arizona. No one had heard from her. The case might have remained just another mysterious disappearance, one of the thousands that occur annually in America, had it not been for Bradley Wright, the land surveyor who entered the Ellis property on March 17, 2018. "I needed to take measurements of all the structures," Wright later testified. "The house was locked up tight, but I had permission to enter through a back window that didn't latch properly. The main floor was dusty but ordinary, just an empty, neglected farmhouse. It was when I went upstairs to check the attic space that I found that room." The room Wright referred to was a small bedroom at the end of the upstairs hallway. Unlike the rest of the house, this door had been sealed with multiple deadbolts, all locked from the outside. Using his tools, Wright managed to get the door open. What he found inside led him to immediately call 911. The bedroom had been completely emptied of furniture. The windows were covered with thick black garbage bags secured with duct tape. But what struck right, what would later become the signature detail of what the press would call the ceiling sleeper case, was the bed. An entire queen-sized bed frame, box spring, and mattress had been methodically attached to the ceiling, inverted as if defying gravity. The installation was not haphazard but meticulous, bolted securely with heavy-duty hardware that would have required significant effort and time to install. Detective Reeves arrived 40 minutes after Wright's call. The room had a chemical smell, he noted in his official report, something like paint thinner mixed with bleach. The walls had been scrubbed clean, recently enough that you could still see white marks. Under ultraviolet light, however, the entire room lit up. Forensic analysis would later confirm extensive blood spatter patterns throughout the room, mostly concentrated on the walls and the inverted mattress above. Despite efforts to clean the scene, whoever had done this had failed to eliminate all the evidence. Most disturbing was what they found inside the ripped pillow, a lock of dark brown hair tied into a knot, later confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Abigail Ellis. Additional analysis revealed multiple blood types present in the room, Abigail's, but also 2 unknown samples. The investigation intensified. Interviews with neighbors yielded an important lead. 2 residents recalled seeing an unfamiliar black pickup truck parked at the Ellis farmhouse several times in the weeks before Abigail's disappearance. Neither could provide a license plate, but one neighbor, Margaret Simmons, remembered something unusual. "I was walking my dog past the Ellis place one evening, probably early September," Simmons told investigators. "I heard hammering coming from upstairs, loud, repetitive hammering. I thought maybe Abigail was finally getting around to those renovations she talked about. It went on for hours." Phone records revealed that Abigail had received multiple calls from a prepaid cell phone in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The calls originated from various locations around Vermont and neighboring New Hampshire, suggesting someone who traveled frequently. The prepaid phone was last used on September 13th, one day after Claire's final visit, and one day before Abigail's bank accounts went silent. 3 months into the investigation, police caught their first real break. Abigail's Toyota Corolla was discovered in a long-term parking garage at Manchester-Boston Regional Airport. The car had been there since September 15, 2017. Inside the trunk, forensics teams found trace amounts of the same chemicals used to clean the bedroom at the farmhouse. Airport security footage from that day showed a tall figure in a hooded jacket parking the Corolla and then walking away, never entering the terminal. The image quality was too poor for facial recognition, but the build suggested a man of above-average height with a distinctive limp. The investigation expanded to include a review of Abigail's past. Friends mentioned that during her marriage to Daniel, Abigail had briefly worked as a volunteer at a prison literacy program in Burlington. Records confirmed she taught weekly classes at the Northwest State Correctional Facility from 2010 to 2012, before her divorce. One inmate she worked with was Jeffrey Garner, a former contractor serving time for aggravated assault. Garner had been released in early 2017, 7 months before Abigail vanished. His physical description matched the figure from the airport footage, including a limp from an old construction injury. When authorities tracked Garner down to a rooming house in Concord, New Hampshire, they found he had left suddenly 3 days earlier, leaving behind most of his possessions. Among his abandoned items, investigators discovered a notebook containing detailed drawings of the Ellis farmhouse layout, including specific measurements of the upstairs bedroom. Also in the room was a business card for Mason's General Store in Westfield, with Abigail's shopping schedule written on the back, and a set of keys that would later be confirmed to fit the deadbolts on the bedroom door at the farmhouse. The manhunt for Jeffrey Garner began immediately. His photograph appeared on news broadcasts throughout the Northeast. Tips flooded in, but none led to his whereabouts. Then, 6 weeks into the search, a state trooper in Maine reported finding an abandoned campsite near the Canadian border. Among the items left behind was a wallet containing Garner's driver's license and a pendant that Claire identified as belonging to her sister. As the investigation continued, more disturbing details emerged. Garner's prison cellmate revealed that Garner had become obsessed with Abigail during the literacy program. He talked about her constantly, the former cellmate stated. Said she was different from other women, that she understood him. He had this theory that people's energy could be transferred through sleep, something about capturing someone's essence while they dreamed. It was bizarre, he'd talk about it for hours. This testimony shed new light on the upside-down bed. Forensic psychiatrists consulted on the case suggested it might represent a ritualistic element connected to Garner's apparent fixation on sleep and dreams. Despite one of the most extensive manhunts in Vermont history, Jeffrey Garner was never found. Canadian authorities were alerted but reported no confirmed sightings. Some speculated he may have died in the vast northern wilderness. Others believed he had successfully crossed into Canada with a new identity. As for Abigail Ellis, her body was never recovered. The blood evidence in the bedroom indicated a fatal injury, but without remains, her case technically remained a disappearance rather than a homicide. The inverted bed, the knotted hair, the meticulously cleaned room, all pieces of a puzzle that remains incomplete to this day. Claire Ellis still lives in Burlington. Each year on her sister's birthday, she returns to Westfield and places flowers at the now demolished site of the farmhouse. The property remains vacant, with no buyers interested in land that has become synonymous with Vermont's most disturbing unsolved case. Local children have created their own folklore around the ceiling sleeper, daring each other to spend nights near the empty lot where the Ellis house once stood. Some claim they can hear hammering on quiet nights. Others swear they've seen a tall figure with a limp walking the perimeter in the early morning hours. Detective Reeves, now retired, keeps a file box in his home office with copies of every document related to the case. Some cases you solve them and move on, he told a local reporter on the 5th anniversary of Abigail's disappearance. Others never let you go. Every night when I close my eyes, I can still see that bed on the ceiling, that body-shaped impression in the mattress, and I wonder if she's at peace wherever she is now. The FBI still maintains an active file on Jeffrey Garner. Occasionally, reports surface of sightings in small towns across New England and eastern Canada. A tall man with a limp, often staying briefly before moving on, sometimes inquiring about remote properties for rent. But like mist in the Vermont mountains, he vanishes before authorities arrive. And somewhere perhaps Abigail's secrets lie buried, like so many victims whose stories remain unfinished, whose final moments are known only to those who took them away. The bed nailed to the ceiling stands as a macabre monument to a crime that defies easy explanation, a mystery that continues to whisper in the dark corners of rural New England. Crime 4, Sarah and Michael Donovan never thought much about the layout of their new rental in Millbrook, Connecticut. The 1930s colonial-style house sat at the end of Wicker Lane, partially obscured by towering maple trees that had stood guard for decades. The listing had advertised a modest 2-bedroom home, affordable, practical, and just what the young couple needed for their fresh start away from Boston. When they toured the property in late September 2018, everything seemed normal. The real estate agent, a thin woman named Diane who spoke in hushed tones, had walked them through each room with practiced efficiency. Living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, small but charming. The hardwood floors creaked underfoot, and the windows rattled when the wind picked up, all character, Diane had assured them. They moved in on October 12th. Michael worked remotely as a software developer, while Sarah had landed a position at the local hospital as a radiologic technologist. Their first week passed uneventfully as they unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, trying to make the unfamiliar space feel like home. It was Sarah who discovered the first door, or rather, noticed it for the first time on their 9th day in the house. "Michael," she called out one evening, standing in the hallway with a basket of laundry balanced against her hip. "Was this closet here when we moved in?" Michael joined her, coffee mug in hand, and stared at what appeared to be a linen closet tucked into the wall between the bathroom and their bedroom. Neither of them could recall opening it during the tour or in the days since moving in. "Must have overlooked it," Michael said with a shrug. "Probably just storage." Sarah set down her laundry basket and pulled the door open. Instead of shelves or a small storage space, the door revealed a perfectly square room, approximately 10 feet on each side. The walls were a flat, unblemished white, no windows, no electrical outlets, just smooth drywall and hardwood flooring that matched the hallways. The room was completely empty. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah whispered. "This can't fit here. The bathroom's right there and our bedroom's there." Michael stepped inside, turning slowly. "Maybe it's some kind of crawl space that got finished. The house is old." They closed the door, both unsettled but unwilling to admit it. That night, Sarah lay awake, listening to the house settle around them, the occasional creak or groan seeming more deliberate than before. 2 days later, Michael was rearranging the kitchen when he noticed something odd about the refrigerator. It didn't sit flush against the wall. When he pulled it forward, expecting to find a forgotten item or perhaps a mouse hole, he instead found another door. Small, about 4 feet tall, with a simple brass knob. "Sarah," he called out. When she arrived, he pointed wordlessly at his discovery. "That's not possible," Sarah said, her voice barely audible. "There's nothing behind this wall. It's the exterior of the house." Michael opened the door anyway. Beyond it lay another room, identical to the first they'd discovered. Same dimensions, same white walls, same hardwood floor, same emptiness. Over the next 11 days, they found 5 more doors, behind the washing machine, in the back of their bedroom closet, under the stairs, inside the pantry. Each one opened to reveal the same room, or what appeared to be the same room, 10 feet by 10 feet, white walls, hardwood floor, no windows, no features, just empty space that, according to the exterior dimensions of the house, shouldn't exist. They called their landlord, a man named Robert Callahan, who lived 2 towns over. He seemed confused by their description, insisted the house was a standard 2-bedroom colonial, and promised to stop by the following week to see what the fuss was about. He never showed up. Their calls to him went straight to voicemail after that. They contacted the real estate agent next. Diane claimed to have no recollection of showing them the property. When they described the house on Wicker Lane, she insisted she'd never listed a property on that street. By November 1st, Sarah and Michael had discovered 9 identical rooms hidden throughout the house. They started avoiding opening cabinets or moving furniture, afraid of what they might find. Sarah began experiencing headaches. Michael developed insomnia. "We should leave," Sarah suggested one night as they sat at the kitchen table, neither touching their dinner. "And go where? We signed a year lease. We can't afford to break it and find somewhere new," Michael replied, though his voice lacked conviction. On November 3rd, while Michael was at the grocery store, Sarah found the 10th door. This one was different, a full-sized door that had appeared in their living room wall, where just that morning there had been a framed photograph of Acadia National Park from their honeymoon. When Michael returned, Sarah was sitting on the couch, staring at the new door. "It wasn't there before," she said without looking at him. "I swear it wasn't there before." Michael set down the groceries and approached the door cautiously. Unlike the others, this one was painted black. The knob was old, made of tarnished brass that had turned almost green with age. "Should we open it?" he asked. Sarah shook her head but said nothing. That night they slept in the living room, taking turns watching the black door. Nothing happened. It remained closed, somehow more menacing in its stillness. In the morning, Michael called in sick to work. They spent the day researching the history of the house. At the local library, they discovered that the house on Wicker Lane had been built in 1932 by a man named Leonard Hartley, a carpenter who had lost his wife and young daughter in a house fire the year before. According to local newspaper clippings, Hartley had become increasingly reclusive after completing the house, rarely seen in town. In 1937, neighbors reported a strange smell coming from the property. When police investigated, they found Hartley dead in the basement, surrounded by architectural drawings and models. The cause of death was ruled a heart attack. The house had changed hands numerous times over the decades. No owners stayed longer than 2 years. That evening, Michael and Sarah returned home, armed with the knowledge that something was deeply wrong with their house, but no closer to understanding what. As they entered the living room, they immediately noticed that the black door was ajar, open just an inch. "I locked that door," Michael said, his voice tight. "I know I locked it." "Maybe it's the wind," Sarah suggested, though there wasn't the slightest breeze in the house. Together they approached the door. Michael pushed it open slowly. The room beyond was identical to the others, 10 feet by 10 feet, white walls, hardwood floor, but this one wasn't empty. In the center of the floor, carved deep into the wood, was a name, Eleanor. Sarah clutched Michael's arm. "Who's Eleanor?" Before he could answer, they heard a sound from behind them, the click of the front door locking itself. Then another click and another, as every door in the house closed simultaneously. The police report filed on November 17, 2018, stated that neighbors called 911 after not seeing the Donovans for nearly 2 weeks. When officers arrived at the address provided, they found only an overgrown vacant lot where the house should have been. Property records showed that no structure had stood at the end of Wicker Lane since 1937, when the original house had been destroyed in a fire. Sarah and Michael Donovan were never found. Their families insisted they had moved to Millbrook, Connecticut, but could provide no address or proof of residence. Their bank accounts remained untouched. Their cars were discovered parked at a train station in Boston, where security footage showed them boarding a train to Connecticut on October 11, 2018. There was no footage of them arriving at their destination. 6 months later, a construction crew broke ground on the vacant lot at the end of Wicker Lane. During excavation, they uncovered a partial foundation and what appeared to be the charred remains of a house that had burned decades earlier. Among the debris, they found a small wooden box containing a child's possessions, a doll, a hair ribbon, and a small diary. The name written on the diary's first page was Alina Hartley. The construction was abandoned when the company went bankrupt unexpectedly. The lot remains empty to this day. Local children avoid it. Dog walkers cross to the other side of the street when passing by. And sometimes, on particularly quiet nights, residents of Wicker Lane report hearing the sound of doors opening and closing, even though there is no house standing at the end of their street. Just empty space where a house with too many rooms once stood, or perhaps still stands, waiting for its next occupants to move in. Crime 5. At the funeral, mourners shared memories, photos, stories, but none of them mentioned the second girl in the pictures, always in the background, always half-turned. When authorities cross-referenced hospital records, no twin was ever registered, and the mother refused to speak after someone sent her a birthday card addressed to both of them. Olivia Mercer had been a fixture in Pinewood, Massachusetts for all of her 28 years. The kind of person everyone knew but few truly understood. She worked at the public library, lived in a modest apartment above the hardware store on Main Street, and could be seen most mornings walking to work with a travel mug of tea, smiling politely at passers-by. She was quiet, but not in a concerning way, recalled Darlene Hopkins, the owner of the bakery where Olivia stopped each Friday for a cinnamon roll. Just self-contained, like she had rich inner worlds we weren't privy to. What no one realized was how literal that assessment would prove to be. February in Pinewood brought the usual slate-gray skies and slush-filled streets. When Olivia didn't arrive for her Tuesday morning shift, her supervisor, Margaret Willis, thought little of it. Perhaps the flu that had been circulating had finally caught up with her. But when a second day passed, then a third with no word, Margaret's concern grew. It wasn't like her at all, Margaret would later tell detectives. In 6 years, she'd never missed work without calling, not once. On the fourth day, Margaret used the spare key Olivia had given her years earlier for emergencies only, and climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment above Kendall's hardware. The radiator hissed, filling the space with stuffy warmth, but something felt immediately wrong. A half-eaten bowl of oatmeal sat on the kitchen counter, a perfect circle of milk congealed around the spoon. The shower curtain was drawn back, towel damp on the rack. Everything suggested a morning routine interrupted. But it was the bedroom that unveiled the first layer of Olivia's carefully constructed life. Photos, hundreds of them, covered one wall entirely. Chronologically arranged, they told the story of a childhood, but not just one. In nearly every image, partially obscured, stood a second girl. Sometimes just a hand at the edge of the frame, sometimes a blurred figure in the background, but unmistakably present. Same height, similar posture, always just out of focus. When Detective Aaron Reeves arrived, his first impression was of a missing persons case transitioning to a potential homicide. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, just the unsettling evidence of a life suspended mid-moment. The photographs disturbed me immediately, Reeves noted in his case file. In 20 years on the force, I'd never seen anything like it. Like someone had been deliberately erased, not from the photos themselves, but from everyone's awareness. Olivia's mother, Alina Mercer, lived 40 minutes away in a retirement community in Westfield. When officers arrived to notify her of her daughter's disappearance, they were met with an unexpected reaction. "Which one?" Alina had asked, voice barely above a whisper. When pressed about what she meant, the elderly woman's demeanor changed completely. She refused to speak further, closing the door with trembling hands. The investigation proceeded along two tracks, finding Olivia and understanding the mystery of the second figure in the photographs. Birth records at Massachusetts General Hospital, where Alina had delivered, showed only one child born on April 17, 1996. There was no twin registered anywhere in the state. We considered the obvious explanations, Detective Reeves later explained. An imaginary friend documented through childhood, a cousin or neighborhood child who was close to the family, but the consistency was troubling. Same height, same build, always partially hidden but unmistakably present. 10 days into Olivia's disappearance, the case took a sharp turn. Alina Mercer was found in her apartment, unresponsive, an empty bottle of sleeping pills on her nightstand. Beside her lay a handwritten note. "I cannot carry this alone anymore. I did what had to be done. They were never meant to be separated." She survived the attempt but remained in a medically induced coma for weeks afterward. Meanwhile, the search for Olivia expanded. Library patrons reported nothing unusual about her behavior in the days before her disappearance. Her few close acquaintances, she didn't seem to have friends in the conventional sense, described her as quiet but content. She mentioned a trip she was planning, remembered coworker Jason Lund. Something about visiting family property. I assumed she meant her mother's place, but thinking back, she seemed, lighter somehow, almost excited. The discovery came almost by accident. While cataloging Olivia's possessions, officers found a property tax statement for land in rural Vermont tucked inside a copy of Wuthering Heights. The land was registered to an E. Mercer trust, with taxes paid regularly for 30 years. Deep in the wooded hills outside Montpelier, accessed by an unmarked dirt road, stood a small cabin. The clearing around it showed signs of recent activity, footprints in the melting snow, firewood stacked neatly beside the door. Inside, investigators found evidence of someone living there for weeks, possibly months, preserved food, water jugs, books stacked beside a reading chair. And photographs, unlike the collection in the apartment, these showed two distinct people, identical in appearance but clearly separate individuals. Olivia and someone who could only be her twin sister. Forensics suggested the cabin had been occupied by two people, Detective Reeves noted, but by the time we arrived, it had been empty for at least 3 days. When Alina Mercer finally regained consciousness, the truth emerged in fragments. Yes, there had been twins, but complications during birth led doctors to believe the second baby, named Amelia, wouldn't survive the night. "They told me to say goodbye," Alina whispered to investigators from her hospital bed, but she kept breathing day after day. The hospital had already processed the single birth certificate. The doctors suggested it would be easier this way. Less paperwork, they said. If she survived, we could correct it later. But Alina never did. Amelia grew alongside Olivia, hidden from official records, from school systems, from the very community they lived within. Homeschooled until age 12, then kept entirely isolated in the Vermont cabin as Alina raised Olivia in mainstream society. "I thought I was protecting them both," Alina said. "People wouldn't understand. They'd take her away, put her in institutions. She was perfectly healthy, just undocumented." What became increasingly clear through interviews with Alina was that the separation had grown more difficult as the girls aged. Olivia began sneaking away to visit her sister, bringing books, news, pieces of the outside world. "They had a bond I could never sever," Alina admitted. "Some days I wasn't sure which one had come home to me." The most disturbing revelation came from Olivia's journals, discovered hidden beneath floorboards in the Vermont cabin. In them, she described an elaborate system of trading places with Amelia, allowing her isolated sister brief tastes of normal life while Olivia retreated to the peace of the woods. "No one notices," she wrote, "not even Mother. We speak the same, move the same. We are interchangeable parts of the same soul." The final entry, dated just days before her disappearance from Pinewood, read simply, "It's time to end the division. We can't live as fragments anymore." To this day, neither Olivia nor Amelia has been found. The birthday card that arrived at Aliner's apartment a month after their disappearance bore no return address. Inside, in handwriting experts would later confirm matched both sisters' journals, was written, "Thank you for giving us life twice. We are finally whole." Investigators continue to receive occasional reports of Olivia Mercer sightings, always in pairs, two identical women glimpsed in train stations or rural diners. But these remain unconfirmed, whispers at the edges of a case that revealed how completely a life or lives could exist in plain sight yet unseen. Aliner Mercer now resides in an assisted living facility, where staff report she often sets two places at her table during meals. When asked about her daughters, she smiles serenely and responds, "They're together now. That's all that matters." Detective Reeves retired last year but admits the Mercer case still haunts him. "Sometimes what looks like a crime is actually something else entirely," he reflected. "Something outside our systems, beyond our understanding. I still wonder which sister I interviewed all those times, or if somehow it was always both." The library in Pinewood keeps Olivia's position open. Her apartment remains untouched, the wall of photographs a testament to lives lived in shadows. And somewhere, perhaps, two identical women walk together in daylight, no longer forced to exist in fragments. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only understood. Crime 6, he was left at the shelter wrapped in a blue blanket, eyes wide, unblinking. But when they lifted his arm to place an ID band, the nurse froze. There, on the inside of his tiny forearm, was a tattoo, faded, homemade ink, a sequence of numbers and one word in block letters, "Return." The nurse, Marion Jessup, had worked at Hope Haven Children's Shelter in northern Oregon for 23 years. She had seen countless abandoned children, but never one bearing a mark like this. The baby couldn't have been more than 6 months old. His cheeks were round and pink, his hair a fine wisp of blonde, perfect in every way except for those crude blue-black numbers etched into his skin. "I need someone in here," she called, her voice steady but strained. The shelter director, Thomas Gardner, came in moments later, his brow furrowing as he leaned over the examining table. "Who would do this?" he whispered, more to himself than to Marion. The tattoo read 458.90 to return in uneven lettering, as if done by an amateur with a makeshift tool. The baby had been discovered at the shelter's doorstep at 5:42 that morning by the maintenance man. No note, no identification, just that blue blanket and a small stuffed rabbit tucked beside him. The security cameras had malfunctioned 3 days prior, a fact that would later prove suspicious to investigators. Detective Eliza Warren arrived an hour after the shelter staff called the police. A 20-year veteran of the Portland Police Department, she had transferred to this quieter coastal town 5 years ago, seeking respite from the relentless pace of city crime. But nothing in her career had prepared her for this. "We've contacted Child Protective Services," Thomas explained as Warren photographed the tattoo. "They'll be here soon to take temporary custody." Has a doctor examined him yet? Warren asked, her voice soft as she observed the baby, now sleeping peacefully despite the commotion around him. Dr. Nichols should be here any minute. She's the pediatrician who volunteers with us. The detective nodded, her mind already churning through possibilities. The tattoo seemed to be at least a few weeks old. It had healed, though not completely. The numbers could be a date, a code, or something else entirely. And that word, return, suggested the baby wasn't simply abandoned, but was meant to be found by someone specific. Dr. Grace Nichols arrived shortly thereafter, her face paling when she saw what had brought her there. After a thorough examination, she confirmed the baby was healthy, well-nourished, and showed no signs of abuse beyond the tattoo itself. "I'd estimate he's about 4 months old," she said. "The tattoo appears to have been done roughly 3 to 4 weeks ago. It's healing well, thankfully, no infection. But I've never seen anything like this in 30 years of practice." By afternoon, the story had spread through the small town of Seacliff. Local news vans parked outside the shelter, and social media buzzed with theories and outrage. Detective Warren had begun interviewing shelter staff and reviewing what little evidence they had. The blanket was store-bought, available at countless retailers. The stuffed rabbit was handmade but had no identifying marks or tags. 3 days passed with no one coming forward to claim the child or provide information. The baby, temporarily named Noah by the shelter staff, was placed with experienced foster parents, the Hendersons, who lived just outside town. On the 4th day, Detective Warren received the call that would turn the investigation in an unexpected direction. "Detective, this is Sheriff Malone from Lincoln County. I think we may have something connected to your case with the tattooed baby." Warren listened intently as Sheriff Malone explained that 10 months prior, a young woman named Amber Lawson had been found wandering along Highway 101, disoriented and suffering from exposure. She had been taken to hospital in Newport, about 60 miles south of Seacliff. During her medical examination, hospital staff had discovered a similar tattoo on her inner wrist, 45892, followed by another word that wasn't return but belong. "We never solved her case," Sheriff Malone continued. "She couldn't or wouldn't tell us what happened to her. She claimed memory loss, but the psychiatrist suspected trauma-induced dissociation. She left the hospital against medical advice after 3 days and disappeared again. We've been looking for her ever since." Warren felt a chill despite the warmth of her office. "Do you have a photograph of her?" "Sending it now." The image that appeared on Warren's screen showed a gaunt young woman with hollow eyes and stringy blonde hair. Despite her apparent state of neglect, there was something hauntingly familiar about her features. Warren immediately drove to the Hendersons' home to look at baby Noah again. The resemblance was subtle but unmistakable, the same shaped eyes, the same distinctive curve of the upper lip. "We need to find Amber Lawson," Warren told her partner, Detective Marcus Chen, when she returned to the station. "I think she's Noah's mother." The search for Amber expanded across 3 counties. Missing person flyers with her photograph were distributed. Local news stations ran the story, carefully omitting details about the tattoos to avoid copycat incidents and to verify any tips that came in. 2 weeks into the investigation, they got their break. A librarian in a small town 30 miles inland recognized Amber from the news. The young woman had been coming to the library almost daily for months, using the computers and reading books on various subjects, including child development and religious texts. She was always quiet, polite, the librarian told Warren. Sometimes she'd write in a journal for hours. I noticed the tattoo on her wrist once, but I didn't think much of it. Lots of young people have tattoos these days. Warren and Chen set up surveillance at the library, and 3 days later, Amber appeared. She was thinner than in her hospital photograph, her hair now dyed dark brown, but her movements had a nervous energy as she scanned the street before entering. They approached her carefully inside, Warren sliding into the chair beside her at the computer station. "Amber, I'm Detective Warren. We need to talk about your baby." The young woman froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, Warren thought she might run, but instead, tears filled her eyes. "You found him," she whispered. "Is he safe?" "He's safe," Warren assured her, "but we need to understand what happened, who tattooed him, what do the numbers mean?" Amber's story emerged slowly over hours of gentle questioning at the police station. She had become involved with a group she described as a family when she was 19, homeless and desperate after aging out of foster care. Their leader, a man she knew only as Father Daniel, had taken her in, given her purpose. "At first it was beautiful," she explained, her voice distant. "We lived on a compound outside of town. Everyone shared everything. Father Daniel said we were chosen to prepare for the coming darkness. But over time, the group had become increasingly isolated and controlling. When Amber became pregnant by Father Daniel, though she didn't say this explicitly, everything changed. He said my baby was special, that he would be the first of the new generation. When Noah was born, Father Daniel wanted to mark him as belonging to the family. I tried to stop him, but..." Her voice trailed off. The numbers, she explained, represented what Father Daniel called their family code: 458 for the group's founding date, April 1958, and 92 for Amber's place in the family hierarchy. She had the same numbers tattooed on her wrist during an initiation ceremony years earlier. "But I couldn't let them keep him," she continued. "They were talking about a purification ceremony when he turned 6 months old. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I knew it wasn't right, so I ran with him." The word return had been added to Noah's tattoo shortly before Amber escaped with him. It was a command: if anyone found the child, they were to return him to the family. Amber's tattoo said belong because she was considered property of the group. "I left him at the shelter because I thought they'd find me," she explained, tears streaming down her face. "I've been watching the place, trying to make sure he was safe. I was going to come back for him when I found somewhere we could go, somewhere they couldn't find us." Over the next several days, Warren and a multi-agency task force pieced together the full picture. The group, which called itself the Family of Light, occupied a remote compound 20 miles outside Seacliff. Their leader, identified as Daniel Rawlins, had a history of involvement with fringe religious groups and a record of fraud charges in another state. When authorities raided the compound, they found 15 adults and 7 other children living in austere conditions. None of the other children had been tattooed, suggesting that Noah indeed held some special status in the group. Rawlins was arrested, along with 3 other senior members. The investigation revealed a pattern of psychological manipulation, financial exploitation, and isolation that had allowed Rawlins to maintain control over his followers for nearly a decade. Many members, like Amber, had been recruited during vulnerable periods in their lives. Amber Lawson was not charged with any crime. Instead, she entered a program for cult survivors, receiving counseling and support as she worked to rebuild her life. Baby Noah remained with the Henderson family temporarily while Amber recovered, with supervised visits that gradually increased in frequency and duration. 6 months after Noah was found at the shelter, Amber had progressed enough in her recovery to petition for custody of her son. The tattoo on his arm had begun to fade slightly, but would require professional removal later in his life, a permanent reminder of his unusual beginning. Detective Warren attended the court hearing where Amber was granted conditional custody of Noah. As she watched the young mother carefully cradling her child, Warren reflected on the complex web of desperation, manipulation, and ultimately, love that had led to this moment. "I want him to know where he came from," Amber told Warren after the hearing, "but also that I chose him over everything else in the end." The Family of Light compound now stood empty, its remaining members scattered after Rollins' arrest. Some had returned to families they had left behind years ago. Others, more deeply entrenched in the group's beliefs, had reportedly sought out similar communities elsewhere. As for Daniel Rollins, he awaited trial on multiple charges, maintaining to investigators that everything he had done was in service to a higher purpose. The numbers 45892, he claimed, were not simply a code but a prophecy, one that Noah was meant to fulfill. Whether there were other marked children out there, other compounds with similar practices, remained an open question, one that occasionally kept Detective Warren awake at night, staring at her case files, wondering what other secrets lay hidden in plain sight within the quiet communities she had once thought she knew so well. Crime 7, renovations had just begun when the crew tore up the linoleum. Beneath the subfloor, in perfect alignment with the bedroom wall, was a large dark stain, sticky smelling of iron. They peeled back more boards, revealing dozens of handprints pressed into the wood, all facing downward, all child-sized. The contractor, Mitch Donovan, had been in the business for 23 years. He'd seen water damage, termite infestations, and mold blooms of every variety. But this was different. The way the stains soaked deep into the grain. The way they formed a perfect outline beneath where a twin bed had once stood in the master bedroom of 1487 Oakwood Drive. Mitch called the police that afternoon, May 12, 2019, a warm Tuesday in Riverdale, Connecticut. The kind of day when neighbors mowed lawns and children played basketball in driveways until dinner. Officer Paula Green was first to respond. She'd been on the force for 8 years, mostly handling domestic disturbances and petty thefts. Nothing like this. The moment she knelt beside the floorboards, she called for backup. The modest 2-story colonial had been vacant for 11 months. The previous owners, the Harriman family, had moved out rather suddenly. Neighbors recalled a yard sale one weekend, a moving truck the next, and then silence. Frank and Louise Harriman had lived in the house for 7 years with their daughter, Ellie, a quiet family. Frank worked in finance, commuting to Hartford every weekday. Louise volunteered at the elementary school library. Ellie was 10 when they moved away. A girl with auburn hair who rode her bicycle around the cul-de-sac and collected painted rocks. They kept to themselves, said Diane Lester, who lived next door. She stood on her porch, arms crossed, watching police cars line the street. Frank would wave when he was mowing, but they never came to block parties. Louise was always tense, like she was afraid of something. Detective Marcus Coleman arrived at 4:35 p.m. He'd worked homicide for 12 years. His first action wasn't to examine the stain or the handprints. Instead, he walked the perimeter of the house, studying windows, door frames, the foundation. When he finally entered, he moved deliberately, taking notes, asking the contractor and his crew to wait outside. When did the new owners purchase the property? Coleman asked Officer Green. March of this year, they've been waiting on permits. Today was supposed to be the first day of renovation. By evening, the house was surrounded by yellow tape. Forensic technicians set up lights that cast harsh shadows across the neighborhood. They worked methodically, carefully removing sections of floorboard, photographing each layer as they went deeper. The lab results came back 3 days later. The stains were human blood, approximately 13 to 18 months old. DNA testing would take longer. The handprints, analyzed for size and impression depth, belonged to a child between the ages of 9 and 11. Detective Coleman requested the Harriman's forwarding address from the real estate agent who had sold the home. The response was troubling. The agent had never met the family in person. All communications had been handled through email with documents signed electronically. The money from the sale had been wired to an account in Oregon, but the address provided, 1435 Pinecrest Road in Portland, didn't exist. Coleman contacted the elementary school where Ellie had been enrolled. Her academic record showed consistent attendance until January 14, 2018, when she was abruptly withdrawn. The reason given was family relocation. The principal remembered Louise coming to collect Ellie's things. She'd seemed rushed, distracted. When asked where they were moving, Louise had mumbled something about Frank's job and hurried away. I should have known something was wrong, the principal told Coleman over the phone, her voice tight with regret. Ellie had been absent the week before. When I asked if she was sick, Louise just said she was resting. But now I remember. Ellie had been getting thinner that winter, quieter. Coleman set up a timeline on the investigation room wall. Photos of the house, school records, neighbors' statements, and at the center a school portrait of Ellie Harriman from 5th grade, a thin face with serious eyes, no smile. The financial investigation revealed more inconsistencies. Frank Harriman had indeed worked at Hartford Investment Group, but had been let go in November 2017, 2 months before Ellie stopped attending school. His colleagues described him as increasingly erratic in his final weeks, missing meetings, arguing with clients. His supervisor had found empty whiskey bottles in his desk drawer. I tried to help him, the supervisor said, offered time off resources. He kept saying he was fine, just dealing with family matters. The last time I saw him, he had a bruise on his cheek, wouldn't tell me how he got it. Coleman obtained a warrant to access the Harriman's phone records. Louise's cell phone had been disconnected in February 2018. Frank's remained active until the day they moved, then never registered on a network again. Their credit cards showed a similar pattern, normal usage, then erratic spending on items like rope, tarps, cleaning supplies, and over-the-counter medications in the weeks before they disappeared. Then a breakthrough. A toll-free camera had captured their minivan crossing into New York State the day after they moved. 3 people visible in the car. Hours later, another camera caught the same vehicle entering Pennsylvania. But in this image, there appeared to be only 2 figures in the front seats. The forensic team finished processing the bedroom on May 21st. They had removed all the subflooring, revealing the foundation cement beneath. There, scratched into the concrete with what appeared to be a nail or screw, were the words, "I'm sorry I couldn't stop it." Detective Coleman requested ground-penetrating radar to examine the property. Nothing was found beneath the house, but in the backyard, beneath a modest garden shed that had been built in the spring of 2018, they detected an anomaly. On May 23rd, they removed the shed. Underneath, the earth had been disturbed. 8 feet down, wrapped in plastic sheeting and a blue fleece blanket with cartoon penguins, they found the remains of a child. The medical examiner worked through the night. The body was that of a female child, approximately 10 years old. Death had occurred due to a combination of malnutrition, dehydration, and untreated pneumonia. There were no signs of physical trauma, but the position of the body suggested the child had been confined to a small space for extended periods. Bone analysis indicated long-term nutritional deficiency. A silver necklace with a heart-shaped locket was found with the remains. Inside was a small school photo, Ellie Harriman smiling beside her mother. The investigation shifted focus. Coleman interviewed every professional who had interacted with the family. A pattern emerged. Louise had become increasingly isolated over the years. She'd withdrawn from volunteer positions, stopped attending church, rarely left the house. Neighbors recalled strange behaviors. Windows covered with blankets, Louise checking the locks repeatedly, long periods where no one saw Ellie outside. The Harriman's family doctor revealed that Louise had been prescribed antipsychotic medication in 2016, but had stopped filling her prescriptions. On Ellie's last checkup, he'd noted concerns about her weight loss and had scheduled a follow-up appointment that was never kept. "I should have reported it," he said, voice breaking. "I just thought she was going through a phase. Kids that age get picky about food." Computer forensics recovered searches from the family's laptop, signs of possession in children, how to perform an exorcism, fasting to remove evil spirits, when does discipline become abuse. On June 7, 2019, police in Boise, Idaho responded to a disturbance at a motel. A woman was screaming about demons coming through the walls. When officers arrived, they found Louise Harriman alone in the room, severely malnourished and disoriented. Frank was nowhere to be found. Louise was hospitalized, then transferred to a psychiatric facility. During lucid moments, she spoke to investigators. Her delusions had begun years earlier, whispers that her daughter was changing, becoming something else. She believed Ellie was possessed. Frank had tried to get her help, but eventually began drinking heavily. Their fights escalated. "I was trying to save her," Louise whispered from her hospital bed. "I had to keep her safe until the evil left." Frank didn't understand. He wanted to take her away from me. According to Louise, Frank had discovered Ellie locked in a closet in January 2018. The child was barely conscious. He'd carried her to the car, intending to take her to the hospital, but Louise had threatened him with a kitchen knife. In the struggle that followed, Ellie had collapsed. By the time they realized how grave her condition was, she was gone. "We both knew no one would believe us," Louise said, "that they'd think we did this on purpose. So we buried her in the place where we used to read stories together, under the window where the sun came in." Frank had built the shed to hide the grave. They'd cleaned the house meticulously, but couldn't remove the bloodstains that had seeped through the floorboards from where Ellie had been confined. Louise couldn't remember what had happened to Frank after they moved away. She said they'd argued at a rest stop in Pennsylvania. He'd walked into the woods, and she'd driven away without him. Despite extensive searches, Frank Harriman has never been found. Some theorize he took his own life, overwhelmed by guilt and grief. Others believe he started a new life under a different name. Occasionally, reports surface of a man matching his description, working odd jobs in small towns across the Northwest, never staying in one place for long. The new owners never moved into the house on Oakwood Drive. The renovation was abandoned, the property sold at a loss. It remains vacant, a silent monument to the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. Ellie Harriman was laid to rest in Riverdale Cemetery on July 15, 2019. Her grave is marked by a simple stone with her name and the dates of her short life. Throughout the year, people who never knew her leave painted rocks on the granite surface, small tokens of remembrance for a child whose suffering went unnoticed for so long. And sometimes, late at night, residents of Oakwood Drive report seeing a light in the window of the empty house, brief, flickering, like a child's nightlight cutting through the darkness. By morning, the house is always dark again, silent, waiting. Crime ate no matter what they planted, herbs, tomatoes, lilies, they bloomed red, every flower no exception. Even seeds bought fresh from out of state turned crimson by the time they sprouted. When they dug deeper, hoping to test the soil, they hit something hard, a thick layer of old, decomposed leather, then bone. The Brenner family had purchased the modest two-story colonial on Maple Street in Oakwood, Illinois, in March of 2018. Sarah and Daniel, both in their early 30s, had fallen in love with the south-facing garden that wrapped around the side of the home. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Margaret Collins, had lived there for nearly 40 years before moving to a nursing facility. The realtor mentioned she had been quite the gardener in her day, though the yard had fallen into neglect during her final years in the home. "Just needs a little love," Daniel had said, squeezing Sarah's hand as they stood on the back porch that first day. Their 7-year-old daughter, Emma, had already been racing around the overgrown yard, imagining all the games she would play there. Sarah started her garden rehabilitation project the week after they moved in. She cleared away the tangled weeds and dead vegetation, tilled the soil, and planted seedlings she'd carefully selected from the local nursery, vegetables for the kitchen, flowers for beauty. Daniel built her raised beds along the eastern edge of the property, and Sarah filled them with rich potting soil, separate from the existing garden. When spring fully arrived, Sarah noticed something peculiar. Everything in her garden, including the raised beds with store-bought soil, was blooming red. The zucchini plants produced flowers of a deep burgundy instead of yellow. The marigolds, which should have been orange and gold, emerged as dark crimson. Even the herbs displayed tiny red flowers that Sarah couldn't explain. "It must be the soil pH," Daniel suggested when Sarah showed him. "Or maybe some mineral in the groundwater here. It's actually pretty cool, don't you think?" Sarah wasn't so sure. There was something unsettling about the uniformity of color, how it spread even to plants that should never produce red blooms. But she tried to embrace the garden's strange quirk. It was Emma who made the discovery 3 months after they'd moved in. Playing with her plastic shovel at the back corner of the yard, where the garden met a small copse of trees, she'd been trying to dig a hole to China. Sarah heard her daughters scream from inside the house. "Mommy, I found something scary." Sarah rushed outside to find Emma standing over a small pit, her yellow plastic shovel discarded beside her. The child pointed with a trembling finger at something dark protruding from the soil. "It looks like a monster," Emma whispered. Sarah approached cautiously, then knelt beside the hole. What Emma had uncovered appeared to be a strip of darkened, deteriorated leather, perhaps from an old boot or jacket. Sarah was about to reassure her daughter when she noticed something else beneath the leather, something white and curved that looked disturbingly like bone. She called Daniel immediately, and he came home from work early. Together they expanded Emma's hole, digging carefully around the leather and bone. The more they uncovered, the more certain they became that they were looking at human remains. The decomposed leather appeared to be the remnants of a jacket, and beneath it lay what unmistakably resembled a human rib cage. The police arrived within 20 minutes of Daniel's call. Detective Lauren Marsh, a veteran of Oakwood's small police force, took charge of the scene. The The Brenners were asked to remain inside while the forensic team carefully excavated the area. By nightfall, they had confirmed the Brenners' fear. A complete human skeleton had been buried in their garden, approximately 3 feet below the surface. Based on the deterioration of the clothing and the surrounding soil conditions, this person has likely been here for decades, Detective Marsh explained to the shaken family that evening. We're treating this as a homicide investigation, but I want to assure you that this is almost certainly something that happened long before you purchased this property. The remains were transported to the county medical examiner's office for further analysis. The family spent a restless night, Sarah checking repeatedly on Emma, who had finally fallen asleep clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. The following day, Detective Marsh returned with more questions. Had they noticed anything unusual about the property? Had the previous owner, Margaret Collins, mentioned anything strange when they met her? The Brenners shared the peculiarity of the all-red garden, which now took on a macabre significance. We never actually met Ms. Collins, Sarah explained. The sale was handled by her nephew, who had power of attorney. He mentioned she had dementia and didn't remember much about the house anymore. The medical examiner's preliminary report came back a week later. The remains belonged to a male, approximately 30 to 40 years old at time of death, who had died sometime between 1970 and 1985. Cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. The man had been wearing a leather jacket and jeans when buried, and a tarnished silver ring was found among the remains. Detective Marsh began investigating Margaret Collins's history. The elderly woman, now 87, resided at Sunny Pines Nursing Home about 30 miles away. Her nephew, Thomas Collins, lived in Seattle and only returned to Illinois occasionally to check on his aunt's affairs. Initial interviews with neighbors who had lived on Maple Street for decades yielded little useful information. Margaret was always private, said Elaine Porter, who lived across the street. Kept to herself, especially after her husband died in '69. Never remarried, spent all her time in that garden of hers. The garden was different back then, added Elaine's husband, Robert, full of vegetables and flowers of all colors. Never saw anything strange about it until maybe the late '70s. Then she tore everything out, started over. That's when she built that fence around the back section. Detective Marsh paid a visit to Margaret Collins at Sunny Pines. The elderly woman was physically frail and, as her nephew had indicated, suffered from advanced dementia. Most questions elicited only vacant stares or confused responses. But when the detective mentioned the garden, something flickered in Margaret's pale blue eyes. "Red," she whispered. "Everything grows red now. He made it that way." "Who made it that way, Margaret?" Detective Marsh asked gently. Margaret's gaze drifted to the window. The man who came to the door, so handsome, said his car broke down. I made him tea. "When was this, Margaret?" "After Richard died, I was so lonely." Her fingers plucked restlessly at her blanket. He said he would fix things around the house, stayed for dinner, then he wanted more than dinner. Her voice hardened suddenly, her eyes clearing momentarily. I said no, he didn't listen. Detective Marsh leaned forward. "What happened then, Margaret?" The garden shovel was right there by the back door, heavy, cast iron. Margaret's hands made a gripping motion. One hit, that's all, then red, so much red. She looked directly at the detective. "I buried him deep, where the roses were, but they all died. Everything I planted after that came up red, every single thing." The detective tried to ask more questions, but Margaret had retreated back into her confusion. mumbling about needing to water her plants. Back at the station, Detective Marsh ran the time frame and description through missing persons cases from the 1970s. A potential match emerged. James Harlow, 34, reported missing in September 1975. Last seen leaving a bar in neighboring Westfield, telling friends he was going to try to get his car fixed. The tarnished ring from the remains was shown to Harlow's sister, who confirmed it belonged to her brother. The case presented a moral and legal dilemma for the prosecutor's office. Margaret Collins had essentially confessed to homicide, but her mental state made her unfit to stand trial. Moreover, the circumstances suggested a possible case of self-defense against sexual assault, though this could never be proven conclusively after so many years. In the end, no charges were filed. Margaret Collins passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 months after the detective's visit, never fully understanding that her decades-old secret had finally emerged from the soil. The Brenners decided to stay in the house, though they completely removed the garden, laying sod over the entire yard. They explained to Emma in age-appropriate terms what had happened and why the flowers had all been red, a manifestation of guilt and trauma that had somehow altered the chemistry of the soil over decades. Yet even with fresh grass covering the yard, Sarah occasionally notices patches where the blades grow just slightly more vibrant than the surrounding lawn. In spring, when dandelions push through the turf, those in the back corner always bloom a deeper yellow, almost orange-red, as if the earth still remembers what happened there nearly 50 years ago. Some secrets, it seems, are too deeply rooted to ever fully disappear. Crime 9, the old recording, was found inside a broken jewelry box hidden beneath layers of velvet lining. It played a soft lullaby, gentle, repetitive, haunting, but linguists couldn't identify the words, and when they enhanced the audio, they heard a second voice beneath the melody, whispering something that made one technician quit on the spot. In the small town of Oak Ridge, Minnesota, Catherine Weaver was known for her meticulous nature. At 42, she ran the local library with a precision that both impressed and occasionally irritated the residents. She lived alone in a modest 2-story house that had belonged to her parents, kept a garden that produced the county's finest tomatoes, and volunteered at the hospital on weekends. Her life followed predictable patterns, like the changing of seasons in the Midwestern landscape. Catherine had been adopted at age 3. The details of her early life remained sparse, a sealed file in some government office, a story her adoptive parents rarely discussed. They had died within months of each other when Catherine was in her 20s, leaving her the house she still lived in and a collection of antiques that she cherished but never displayed. On December 4th, 2021, Catherine didn't open the library. Snow had fallen overnight, covering Oak Ridge in 8 inches of pristine white. The library assistant, Melissa Jenkins, waited 30 minutes before calling Catherine's cell phone. When no one answered, she assumed the roads were bad. By noon, with no word from Catherine, Melissa called the police. Officer Dennis Hawthorne drove to Catherine's house, expecting to find her stuck in her driveway or dealing with a power outage. The driveway had been shoveled. The lights were on inside. Catherine's Toyota Corolla sat in the garage, but Catherine wasn't there. The house was immaculate, Officer Hawthorne would later testify. Everything in its place. Coffee cup washed and dried on the rack, bed made with hospital corners, no signs of struggle or forced entry. The only peculiarity was an antique jewelry box open on the dining room table. The velvet lining had been partially removed, revealing a hidden compartment. Next to it lay a small tape recorder, the kind journalists used in the 1980s. When Officer Hawthorne pressed play, the lullaby filled the room. Soft, melodic, with words that sounded almost familiar but weren't quite English, French, German, or any language he recognized. He took the recorder as evidence, though at the time he didn't consider it significant. 3 days passed with no sign of Catherine. The search expanded. Volunteers combed the woods behind her house. Divers checked the frozen lake. Nothing. Meanwhile, forensic audio specialist Elaine Mercer was tasked with analyzing the recording. "At first, I thought it was just a sweet lullaby," she said. "But when I boosted certain frequencies, I discovered there were two voices. The singing voice masked another voice underneath, whispering, almost chanting." Elaine worked for hours to isolate the whispered words. When she finally succeeded, she played it back with trembling hands. "I know what you did with the girl. She's still there where you left her, and I'm coming for you next." The whispered message changed everything. Catherine was no longer just missing. She might be in danger, or she might be dangerous. The investigation took a turn when police discovered Catherine had withdrawn $24,000 from her savings account over the previous 6 months. Detective Marcus Reynolds interviewed library patrons and found that Catherine had been researching genealogy extensively. She had requested several rare books on adoption records from other libraries. "She seemed obsessed with finding her birth parents," said Elaine Porter, a regular library visitor. "I once found her crying in the biography section. When I asked what was wrong, she just said, 'Some truths should stay buried.'" While searching Catherine's home again, police discovered a hidden folder containing newspaper clippings about a 1981 cold case. A 3-year-old girl who had vanished from her bedroom in Lacaton, a town about 60 miles from Oak Ridge. The girl, Amanda Hughes, had never been found. The timeline matched. Catherine would have been 3 in 1981. But if she was Amanda Hughes, who was Catherine Weaver? And why would someone threaten her with a recording hidden in a jewelry box? Detective Reynolds tracked down the adoption agency that had handled Catherine's case. Most records had been destroyed in a fire in 1998, but one employee remembered the Weavers. They were a lovely couple who couldn't have children of their own. They adopted Catherine from a private arrangement. No formal agency was involved. On day 17 of the investigation, police received a call from a woman in Duluth who had seen Catherine's picture on the news. "That's not Catherine Weaver," the woman insisted. "That's Diane Lampley. She worked for my family as a nanny in 2010. She disappeared after my daughter claimed Diane had been asking strange questions about whether she was happy with us, whether she'd like to live somewhere else." Fingerprint analysis confirmed it. Catherine Weaver and Diane Lampley were the same person. And Diane Lampley's real name, according to a 2008 assault charge that had been dismissed, was Rebecca Sloan. As the investigation deepened, Detective Reynolds discovered 5 other identities this woman had used over 20 years. In each case, she had worked in positions that gave her access to children: librarian, teacher's aide, nanny, hospital volunteer. The breakthrough came when police found a storage unit rented under the name Rebecca Sloan. Inside was a collection of children's clothing from different decades, dozens of photos of children playing in parks, and journals detailing observations of families, which ones seemed neglectful, which children seemed unhappy, which homes had weak security. Most disturbing was a map marked with stars across 3 states. When investigators checked the locations, they found each corresponded to a case of a missing child, 8 in total, spanning 20 years. But there were no children in the storage unit, no direct evidence of abduction. On the 32nd day of the investigation, Catherine, or whoever she really was spotted at a bus station in Chicago. Security cameras showed her boarding a bus to Indianapolis. She was wearing a disguise but carried the same handbag she'd had in Oak Ridge. The bus arrived, but she wasn't on it when it reached Indianapolis. Meanwhile, linguist Dr. Martin Chen had been studying the lullaby. The words aren't nonsense as we first thought, he explained. They're a blend of Czech and an obscure Moravian dialect, altered to create what linguistics calls a private language, something developed between two people who want to communicate secretly. When translated, the lullaby told a disturbing story about a woman who created a garden of children, not harming them, but saving them from parents who didn't deserve them. On day 45, a package arrived at the Oak Ridge Police Department addressed to Detective Reynolds. Inside was a USB drive containing a video of Catherine/Rebecca sitting in an unknown location. "By now you've found my collection," she said calmly to the camera, "but you'll never find them. They're safe with me, loved as they should have been. The tape was left by someone who suspected, another collector, you might say. We recognize each other sometimes, but they don't understand my purpose." She smiled, a gentle expression that didn't reach her eyes. "I was taken once, you know, not saved. Taken, there's a difference. I know which children need saving." The video ended with her singing the lullaby. To this day, the woman known variously as Catherine Weaver, Diane Lampley, and Rebecca Sloan remains at large. The 8 children connected to her, if they are still alive, have never been found. The jewelry box and recorder were traced to an antique shop in Vermont that had no record of who had sold them the items. Sometimes, late at night, Detective Reynolds plays the lullaby, listening for clues in the whispered undercurrent. The words haunt his dreams. "I know what you did with the girl. She's still there where you left her." And he wonders which girl they meant, and where she might be now, and whether she's singing that same lullaby to someone else's children. Story 10. The tale unfolds in the stillness of a closing costume shop, its shelves now barren, echoes of laughter fading into the shadows. Among the remnants of forgotten disguises, a woman's hand reached for a mask, its delicate features frozen in an unsettlingly lifelike gaze. The cashier's voice wavered as she placed it on the counter, his words barely a whisper. "That's not ours." Bewildered, she sought a tag, only to find none. With a nonchalant shrug, she carried it home, unaware of the dormant power that now lay in her hands. As night draped its velvet cloak over the world, a soft rustle stirred her from slumber, fabric shifting, a whisper on the edge of perception. Her eyes flickered open to find the mask perched on her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her with an unspoken intent. The woman known as Catherine Reed would be discovered the following morning by a concerned neighbor. The door ajar, sunlight spilling into the somber room, revealing a scene that would perplex even the most seasoned investigators. Detective Morgan arrived, her presence a solemn shadow amidst the hushed tones of the forensics team. Clicking shutters provided a rhythm to the unfolding mystery. "No signs of forced entry," observed an officer, pen scratching against paper. The detective's gaze wandered, absorbing the subtle details that whispered of a life interrupted. A drawer ajar, a lipstick-stained water glass, a room frozen in time, save for the woman who would never wake again. The medical examiner knelt beside the motionless form, a frown etched upon his features. Cause of death unclear at first glance, no visible wounds, no evidence of struggle. Gesturing towards her visage, he remarked, "Look at the fear etched upon her face, a terror that transcends the mortal realm." Detective Morgan knelt beside him, her voice barely a breath. "Something beyond comprehension has claimed her." Catherine had lived a life defined by the discernment of art, her keen eye unrivaled in its ability to unveil the counterfeit amidst the authentic. Colleagues spoke of her with reverence, recounting her uncanny knack for detecting the subtlest of discrepancies. The detective pondered if this gift had unwittingly led her down a path of darkness. Footage from the costume shop unveiled a peculiar interaction the cashier's bewilderment mirrored in the owner's denial. A mask of unknown origin, a harbinger of forgotten terrors. The detective's inquiry led her to a shop stripped bare, its owner's confession a whisper of dread. The mask appeared during a clearance sale, a relic from a collector's haunted past. We never knew its true origin, only that it carried a curse. Forensics uncovered microscopic fibers entangled in Catherine's grasp, an enigma woven into her final moments. She clutched at something, the technician explained, fibers of a nature unknown, a blend of the organic and the arcane. Each thread a silent witness to a malevolent force that defied comprehension. Records unveiled a tapestry of tragedies, each victim linked by a mask of dread, each death shrouded in unsolved enigma. A retired detective shared his knowledge, a repository of forgotten lore. Symbols etched within the masks, a ritual older than memory, a cycle of transference that defied reason. A hidden journal unveiled Catherine's descent into darkness, her words a testament to a terror unseen. The mask's insidious presence, its insatiable hunger for souls, a collector's legacy of death, a trail of victims left in its wake. The detective pieced together a mosaic of horror, the truth too ghastly to utter aloud. The cause of Catherine's demise was revealed, a heart stilled by unbridled fear, a terror that transcended mortal boundaries. Surveillance footage captured a figure in the night, donning Catherine's essence like a macabre masquerade. The mask, a vessel of malevolence, a specter from a realm beyond. Months passed and whispers arose of a mask reborn in a distant vintage shop. By the time investigators arrived, it had vanished into the hands of an unknown buyer, its legacy perpetuated in shadow. The case remained a riddle unsolved, a truth too harrowing to confront. The detective safeguarded Catherine's journal, a testament to the darkness that lurked unseen. In the stillness of night, she felt the weight of unblinking eyes upon her, a specter of dread that lingered in the shadows. The mask, a harbinger of doom, awaited its next unwitting bearer, a cycle unbroken, a legacy of fear that spanned eternity. Story 11, the town held its secrets close, never uttering a word about the house standing sentinel at the edge of the woods. It loomed in solitude, its windows like dark eyes, its porch stooped with the weight of time's passage. No one dared to claim ownership of it, and the origins of its construction had faded into the mists of forgotten memory. An unspoken agreement enveloped the community, leaving the house undisturbed in its lonely vigil. But fate had other plans when a group of hikers strayed too near, their curiosity unwittingly leading them to a chilling discovery. There, etched into the weathered wooden siding of the house, were names that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, carved deep as if to serve as omens. Among the list of 27, one name shone fresh and unblemished, a stark contrast to the aged markings surrounding it. And when one of the hikers whispered, voice quivering with disbelief, "That's mine," the wheels of a haunting mystery were set into motion. The call came in the dead of night, a mere trespassing report on the surface. Mason Wright, the intrepid lead hiker who had stumbled upon his own name etched into the mysterious house, spoke with a tremor in his voice as he relayed the unsettling discovery to the authorities. What began as a routine investigation into possible vandalism swiftly spiraled into a realm of the inexplicable. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as dusk draped the forest in a cloak of shadows. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the names that adorned the eastern wall of the structure. Each name told a tale of loss and disappearance, a chilling reminder of lives interrupted and fates unknown. And at the bottom, stark and fresh, stood Mason Wright, a name that seemed to mock the laws of time and reason. Mason, bewildered and shaken, protested his innocence, his very presence in that place a mystery to himself. As the investigation unfolded, a sinister pattern emerged, one that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned detectives. Each name on the wall belonged to a soul reported missing over the course of 40 haunting years, individuals who had vanished without a trace while wandering these very woods alone. Forensic experts meticulously documented the carvings, unraveling a tapestry of dread and despair. The oldest name, that of Rebecca Hansen, harkened back to a decades-old case of a young woman lost to the wilderness, her fate sealed in the annals of unsolved mysteries. Mason's protestations of innocence rang true under scrutiny, his past devoid of connections to the enigmatic names that now haunted his every waking moment. The focus of the investigation shifted to Mason's companions, their recollections scrutinized for any shred of evidence that could shed light on the chilling enigma. In the group photographer's images, a spectral figure lurked at the periphery, a phantom presence that defied explanation or recollection. The veil of normalcy was slowly lifting, revealing a world teeming with shadows and unseen forces. A descent into the bowels of the abandoned house unearthed a macabre tableau, a shrine to the missing, their belongings arranged with chilling precision on dusty shelves. Each item bore a name, a silent testament to lives abruptly halted and destinies unfulfilled. The air hung heavy with the weight of unresolved grief, the walls whispering secrets long kept hidden from mortal eyes. As the tendrils of the investigation coiled ever tighter, Mason's reality began to unravel. Whispers in the night, phantom footprints in the snow, and spectral figures haunting his every step painted a portrait of mounting dread and paranoia. The line between hunter and hunted blurred, a sinister game of cat and mouse unfolding in the shadows of the unknown. The discovery of long-buried land records unearthed a name from the past: Victor Blackwood, a reclusive figure whose presence loomed large over the unfolding tragedy. A man shrouded in mystery, Blackwood's journal revealed a chilling descent into madness, his observations of hikers evolving into a twisted obsession with human prey. The forest echoed with the echoes of his dark deeds, a legacy of terror that refused to be silenced. The hunt for Blackwood spanned jurisdictions, a manhunt that gripped the collective imagination with its tendrils of horror. Yet the elusive figure remained a specter, a phantom that danced on the edges of perception, eluding capture and comprehension. Mason, his fate entwined with the enigmatic house and its spectral occupants, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void of unanswered questions and unspoken fears. In the shadow of the abandoned house, a new name awaited its fateful inscription, a chilling reminder of the relentless march of time and fate. The walls whispered of unspeakable truths, their secrets buried deep within the labyrinthine corridors of the human soul. And as the night stretched on, enveloping the world in its embrace, the house stood silent and watchful, a sentinel of mysteries untold. Story 12. In the quiet of a suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in the mail, wrapped in a plain envelope devoid of any return address. It was a solitary brass key, its surface worn with the passage of time. The homeowner, Sarah Miller, felt a strange sense of familiarity despite not recognizing it. Intrigued, she attempted to fit the key into every lock she owned, but none yielded to its touch. It was a key that did not belong to her. Perplexed, she placed it on her coffee table, and in that moment the old grandfather clock in the hallway emitted a single, eerie chime, even though it had long been silent due to disrepair. Sarah, unsettled by this inexplicable occurrence, reported the strange event to the authorities. What began as a seemingly peculiar incident soon unraveled into a chilling criminal investigation that would shake the foundations of the Serene neighborhood. The responding officer, initially dismissive of Sarah's concerns, regarded the key as a mere mistake in the mail. However, Sarah's intuition whispered that something was amiss. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as evidence, placing it in a small evidence bag that would later prove to be crucial in unveiling a sinister truth. The case file eventually landed on the desk of Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with the Special Victims Unit. As he examined the unassuming brass key, an unsettling aura seemed to emanate from its worn surface. Background checks on Sarah revealed no blemish on her record: a retired high school English teacher, a widow with grown children living afar. Her life appeared ordinary, with no hint of suspicion in her financial or social history. She was, as far as the records showed, an innocent recipient of a mysterious key. Forensic analysis uncovered only Sarah's fingerprints on the key, and the envelope yielded no clues beyond a generic postmark. The key itself, a standard Schlage, seemed unremarkable, yet its significance lay hidden beneath its weathered exterior. A breakthrough occurred when Detective Harmon decided to run the key's unique pattern through the department database, unearthing a connection to a cold case from 7 years prior. This cold case revolved around a storage unit with a blood-stained past. The key's pattern matched the one found at the scene, where evidence of unspeakable crimes had been discovered. The original investigation had hit a dead end, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and unidentified victims. Sarah was shown photographs of the women linked to the case, but she recognized none of them. As the investigation deepened, Sarah's unease grew, prompting her to fortify her home with new locks and a security system. The search for the perpetrator led Detective Harmon down a twisted path of deceit and darkness. A breakthrough in the case came when genealogical databases provided a distant familial match to the suspect, a man named Harold Jenkins, who had once lived just streets away from Sarah. Jenkins, a shadowy figure with a mysterious past, had seemingly vanished without a trace. Further investigations painted a disturbing picture of Jenkins, a man who had lived among them, unnoticed and unsuspected. Neighbors described him as unremarkable, a recluse who had kept to himself. The discovery of a hidden room beneath the floorboards of a cabin registered to Jenkins' deceased mother unveiled a chilling truth. Rows of brass keys, each engraved with a name and date, hinted at a string of horrors previously unknown to authorities. As the investigation unfolded, forensic teams unearthed human remains buried behind the cabin, revealing the extent of Jenkins' depravity. Sarah, now under constant protection, found herself at the center of a nationwide manhunt for the elusive predator known as the Keymaster. Fear gripped the community as the magnitude of the horrors lurking within their midst became apparent. The hunt for Jenkins culminated in a tense standoff in the wilderness, where he met his end by his own hand. A journal found beside his lifeless body detailed his crimes, alongside a brass key identical to the one Sarah had received. The journal's final entry addressed Sarah directly, revealing Jenkins' twisted obsession with her. The investigation uncovered a total of 32 victims, bringing closure to families who had long searched for answers. Sarah, unable to return to her home, was forever changed by the brush with darkness that had come so close to her ordinary life. The The grandfather clock that had chimed mysteriously was revealed to have been rigged with a wireless receiver, a haunting reminder of the predator's watchful eye. The case of Harold Jenkins, the keymaster, stands as a chilling reminder of the evil that can lurk behind a facade of normalcy. As researchers delve into the depths of his writings, seeking to prevent similar tragedies, a collection of brass keys remains in silent testament to lives cut short and the darkness that sometimes dwells within the most unassuming of individuals. Story 13, the hotel sat silently, a relic of the past where transient souls sought a temporary respite. The key exchanged hands with a peculiar warning from the clerk, a cryptic message lingering in the air. Just avoid the last door on the left, his words barely audible. Intrigue sparked within her, a flame of curiosity that beckoned her towards that forbidden threshold. That night, amidst the hushed corridors bathed in dim light, she stood before the ominous door. The brass handle sent shivers down her spine, its cold touch a prelude to the mystery beyond. To her eyes, the door appeared ordinary, blending seamlessly with its companions until she leaned closer, pressing her ear against the wood. A faint breath, a whisper from the other side, a presence unseen but felt. Detective Morgan Reed awoke from her slumber, entering the crime scene veiled by yellow tape. The stench of iron lingered, a familiar scent that led her to the scene of tragedy. Blood had seeped into the fabric underfoot, a stark contrast against the untouched surroundings. The room bore witness to a macabre scene, pristine bathroom, undisturbed bed, and the grim tableau in between. A young woman lay lifeless, her golden locks splayed like a halo, her vacant gaze fixed upon eternity. Reed knelt beside the victim, mindful of the evidence markers scattered around. Third one this season, the technician monotoned, capturing the scene through his lens, the same signature as before. Reed nodded in silence, absorbing the somber reality. Victim adorned in opulent attire clashed with the drab motel setting, a sharp incongruity that spoke of a different world. A designer handbag lay open, untouched, dispelling any notions of theft. This was a crime of a different nature, a dark force propelling the killer's hand. The hotel manager loitered anxiously, his pallor betraying his unease. She checked in alone, paid in cash. I never imagined. His voice faltered, haunted by the tragedy that unfolded within his neglected establishment. Reed surveyed the room, searching for clues amidst the silence. No signs of forced entry, no struggle evident on the victim. She had either welcomed her fate or recognized it too late. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned the photos on the board, a grim triptych of victims linked by tragedy. Questions loomed, the shadow of a predator lurking in the whispers of the community. The autopsy report is in, announced Detective Hayes, breaking the silence with a folder in hand. Death by strangulation, no signs of a struggle. Reed's brow furrowed, sensing a personal vendetta beneath the surface. Days blurred into nights as the investigation delved deeper. Surveillance footage yielded no answers, painting a mundane picture of the victim's final hours. Elaine Werner, a financial analyst with no enemies, found herself ensnared in a web of darkness. A breakthrough emerged during an interview with Werner's sister, unraveling a clandestine affair shrouded in secrecy. A man known only as C, a figure from her professional life, cast a long shadow over the investigation. Charles Emerson, a senior executive, epitomized charm and discretion, masking a sinister truth. Reed's intuition probed, unearthing fragments of a forbidden liaison that led to fatal consequences. Emerson's alibi wavered under scrutiny, his facade cracking under the weight of guilt. Forensics tied Emerson to the crime, unraveling a tapestry of deceit woven with meticulous precision. His dual life unfurled, a tape recording of twisted encounters that mirrored the past. The courtroom became a stage for justice, exposing the monster beneath the tailored facade. Emerson's cold gaze met Reed's, a void where empathy should reside, a chilling reminder of the darkness that dwelled within. The trial ended swiftly, a chapter closed in the annals of crime. Emerson sentenced to a life devoid of freedom, the key to his prison cell forever lost. The media christened it the Door on the Left case, a tale that echoed through the corridors of time. Reed, haunted by the specter of unresolved mysteries, found solace in the locked evidence, a testament to the doors that should never be opened. In the stillness of the night, she wandered down hotel hallways, counting the doors, listening for the secrets that whispered behind them. And in the depths of the evidence locker, 3 keys remained, silent witnesses to the darkness that lurked behind each door left ajar. Story 14. The old Polaroid held secrets, memories frozen in time, a birthday celebration captured long ago. Faces smiled, candles flickered, a scene of joy and innocence. Yet hidden within the group, a mysterious figure lurked in the shadows, unnoticed by all but the daughter who unearthed the box of forgotten photographs. Sarah Winters uncovered the collection while sorting through her mother's attic after the funeral. The box, labeled Memories, held a treasure trove of moments from her childhood, or so she thought. But as she delved into the past, a chilling discovery awaited her. In the first photo, he was a mere silhouette, a dark presence on the edge of the frame during her 7th birthday party. His obscured face watched from outside near the glass door. In the next photo, he had crept closer inside now, and in the following images, he inched his way towards the family, always lurking just out of sight. Concerned and trembling, Sarah called her father, seeking answers to the enigma captured in the faded photographs. "Dad, who is this man haunting our memories?" His shocked silence was palpable before he stammered, "What man? There should be no one but family in those pictures." Determined to unravel the mystery, Sarah sought the help of Detective Marcus Reed. As the rain tapped against the windows of the precinct, she laid out the photos before him. The detective's keen eyes traced the progression of the shadowy figure, a ghostly presence moving closer to the unsuspecting children with each snapshot. No one recognized the man, no one remembered his presence. Each attempt to unveil his identity led to dead ends and eerie revelations. The figure remained elusive, strategically hidden in plain sight, a phantom haunting the past. But Sarah's persistence paid off when she discovered more photos across different family albums, spanning years of gatherings. With the aid of a computer specialist, hidden details emerged from the degraded images: a scar, a ring, a faint reflection unveiling a face long shrouded in darkness. A breakthrough came with dental records, linking the figure to Robert Keller, a maintenance worker with a dark past of child abductions. Keller's connection to the vacation property where Sarah's birthday had taken place sent shivers down her spine. The pieces of a long-forgotten puzzle were falling into place. The excavation of Keller's former residence unearthed chilling relics: a hair clip, a toy car, a bracelet, all belonging to missing children. The truth emerged from the shadows, revealing a sinister past concealed behind the facade of family gatherings and celebrations. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the haunting photos, Sarah received the news of the identification of remains near the vacation property. DNA confirmed the fate of one of the missing children, bringing closure to a chapter of unsolved mysteries that had haunted families for decades. As she gazed at the final birthday photo, the figure's presence loomed, a specter of darkness amidst the flickering candles of joy. Justice had finally caught up with the hidden threat, a shadow exposed to the light after years of lurking in the background, unseen yet ever present. The box of photographs became a testament to the invisible dangers that lurk within captured moments, a reminder that some shadows move through life's celebrations unnoticed, leaving behind only traces of their sinister existence in the memories frozen in time. Story 15. The old floorboard gave way under her weight, causing a slight shift that caught her attention. Kneeling down, she traced her fingers along the edges, sensing the hidden gap beneath the seemingly solid surface. With gentle precision, she pried up the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow space concealed beneath the house. At first, only dust and cobwebs greeted her eyes. But as they adjusted to the dim light, a chilling discovery emerged: a mattress, a chair, and in the shadows, a worn notebook filled with pages upon pages of her name, written repetitively. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman, observing the profound unease etched on her face as she peered into the abyss below her new abode. It wasn't just about uncovering a hidden room. It was a violation of security, an intrusion of something sinister into what was supposed to be her fresh beginning. "Please refrain from touching anything else." Detective Reed's voice was calm yet resolute as she directed Sarah. Clicking on her flashlight, she cast a revealing beam into the concealed space, exposing walls adorned with surveillance photograph snapshots of Sarah in various moments of her daily life, a shrine of obsession crafted right beneath her unsuspecting feet. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly recluse named Walter Green, who had passed away without any known kin. The property had sat empty for months before being put on the market, described as charming and in need of minor touch-ups. No mention of anything peculiar had surfaced during inspections or the sale process. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah's voice barely above a whisper. "The neighbors mentioned he was reclusive. I was told that basement access was sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report stated." As crime scene investigators arrived, their equipment echoed against the wooden floors upon entry. They meticulously documented every detail, collecting evidence and eventually removing the mattress, chair, and notebook from the hidden enclave. Forensic analysts uncovered a myriad of fingerprints throughout the space, all belonging to Walter Green. But what truly unsettled the investigators was the timeline they reconstructed. Through utility records and dated photographs found in the chamber, it became evident that Walter had been observing Sarah for at least 3 years prior to his demise. He had shadowed her steps, mingled at the same locales, and even frequented the cafe where she occasionally worked. Yet Sarah remained oblivious to his presence. "This level of fixation often escalates," remarked the department's psychologist during a debriefing. "The individual progresses from fantasy to strategic planning. The hidden room implies preparations for a more direct interaction." Detective Reed's inquiries took an unexpected turn upon interviewing Walter's former coworker from the maintenance department at a local shopping complex. The man appeared uneasy, fiddling with his wedding band throughout their conversation. "Walter would mention her occasionally," he confessed. "Claimed she reminded him of someone. I assumed it was just an elderly man's infatuation. I never imagined." His words trailed off, his gaze fixed on his hands. "Did he ever discuss any intentions involving her?" Reed inquired. Not explicitly, but he had this phrase he'd repeat, something about belonging together. I thought it was mere talk. Subsequently, Reed obtained a warrant to explore Walter's workplace locker, left untouched since his passing. Inside, they unearthed a key that didn't correspond to any locks in Walter's residence. Following the serial number led them to a storage unit registered in his name. As the metallic door rumbled open with a grating sound, a chilling scene unfolded. Neatly arranged within were replicas of furniture from Sarah's former apartment, her bed, desk, and even her living room set, meticulously duplicated. A mannequin adorned with a wig mirroring Sarah's hairstyle sat at a replica desk. The most disturbing revelation was a calendar with a date circled in red, just a week after Walter's sudden demise, bearing a single word: together. Further investigations unveiled that Walter had been institutionalized in his youth after fixating on a female educator. His records indicated treatment for erotomania, a delusion where the subject believes fervently that another person reciprocates their affection despite evidence to the contrary. Released and living without incident for decades, something about Sarah reignited his dormant obsessions. At the police precinct, Reed spread crime scene images across the conference table. In his mind, he passed away convinced they shared a unique bond. He believed they were destined to be united. Is there a possibility she encountered him unknowingly, sparking this fixation? A fellow detective inquired. Reed shook her head. There's no trace we can find. Sometimes these infatuations require very little. A fleeting smile from a stranger, a gaze that lingers a moment too long. For an individual with his background, that might be sufficient. Sarah resolved to sell the house, unable to reclaim a sense of security within its walls. During the final walkthrough with her real estate agent, she stood in the living room, her arms wrapped around herself. I can't help but think about what might have unfolded if he hadn't passed away when he did, she murmured softly. How long would I have dwelled here, unaware of his surveillance, unaware of the secrets concealed beneath my very feet? Following Walter's demise, the case was officially closed, documented as stalking with intent to abduct, even though the abduction never materialized. The psychological evaluation of the evidence indicated Walter had intended to confine Sarah either in the hidden room or the storage unit. Sarah relocated far away, altering her routines and becoming more vigilant regarding her personal information. Detective Reed occasionally checked in on her, silently acknowledging how perilously close Sarah had been to becoming another tragic statistic, another casualty. The cottage eventually found new owners in a young couple unaware of its haunting past. The hidden chamber was securely sealed, the floorboards replaced, life persisted. Yet for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor served as a haunting reminder of the concealed dangers that sometimes lurk unseen, of monsters who evade capture and death, and of victims who remain oblivious to the peril that once loomed perilously close to their very existence. Story 16: The Enigmatic Manor. The new occupants of the Grand Victorian Manor dismissed the crackling of the old intercom system as a quaint peculiarity, a reminder of a bygone era, now a mere whisper in time. Nestled amidst ancient oak trees, the manor exuded an air of mystery, its exterior weathered yet concealing a modern interior reborn through renovations. Daniel and Meredith Parker, enamored by history, had acquired the property at a surprisingly modest price, despite the real estate agent's uneasy demeanor during the initial tour. The vintage intercom system, linking all rooms, had captivated the couple's imagination and sealed the deal. One fateful night, curiosity led the husband to press the intercom button, unleashing a spectral whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" the voice hissed through the crackling speaker, catching him off guard. His hands trembled as he recoiled, his wife, standing behind him, denying ever uttering those words. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call hinting at a possible break-in, yet the dispatcher's tone hinted at a deeper mystery. Daniel, with a pallid complexion, welcomed the detective, recounting the eerie occurrences with the intercom that had plagued them. Intrigued, Detective Reeves followed the Parkers through the grand foyer, where Meredith, visibly shaken, revealed a startling discovery hidden behind a wall. A small leather-bound journal, wrapped in aged plastic, bore witness to a haunting tale penned by a woman named Aliner, the home's former owner. Aliner's journal entries chronicled her escalating fears of her husband Vincent, hinting at sinister intentions. The final entry, dated 3 decades prior, marked the abrupt end of her writings, leaving a chilling void in her story. The investigation unearthed the dark truth of the Blackwood family's past. Vincent Blackwood, the enigmatic figure at the center of the mystery, had meticulously fabricated a narrative of Aliner's departure, concealing a heinous crime that had remained buried for years. Forensic analysis of human remains unearthed beneath the garden shed implicated Vincent in Aliner's tragic fate. The skeletal remains of a woman in her 40s, bearing signs of fatal head trauma, revealed the harrowing truth of Aliner's demise. A poignant clue, a gold wedding band inscribed with "To Aliner, my eternal love," sealed Vincent's fate as the orchestrator of his wife's untimely end. Vincent, now aged and residing in a care facility, confessed to the chilling murder, citing Aliner's incessant presence through the intercom as his motive for silencing her forever. His calculated deception and decades-long charade crumbled under the weight of irrefutable evidence. The swift trial concluded with Vincent's guilty plea, drawing attention to the meticulous planning and subterfuge that had shielded his crime from justice. Daniel and Meredith, haunted by the manor's dark legacy, parted ways with the house, holding a solemn memorial for Aliner in the restored garden. As the manor changed hands once more, the intercom system, a harbinger of tragedy, was removed during renovations. Workers reported eerie whispers and static during its dismantling, attributing the phenomenon to mere electrical interference. Detective Reeves, reflecting on the haunting case, revisited the Blackwood file one final time before its closure. The house, a silent witness to past horrors, had found its voice through the echoes of time, ensuring justice prevailed. Known among law enforcement as the house that answered back, the manor's enigmatic tale lingered in the collective memory of all who crossed its threshold. Occasionally, Detective Reeves would pass by the manor on her way home, the wind carrying whispers of a bygone era. Though she never stopped, she would slow down, the window cracked open, listening for the faint echoes carried on the breeze, a reminder of the enigmatic secrets that dwelled within the walls of the mysterious manor. Story 17. She entered through the front door where dust danced in the stagnant air. The house had stood abandoned for years, its walls shedding paint, its furniture draped in ghostly sheets. As she ventured deeper, it felt as though she had stepped into a moment frozen in time except for one peculiar detail. The doors, each one she opened, led her back to the same room, a relentless loop that defied logic. No matter the direction she took, she always found herself back in the parlor. The way she had come in was now the only way out, yet when she turned to leave, the front door had vanished into thin air. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body transformed the once-forgotten Victorian house from a mere curiosity to a chilling crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind stood at the threshold, observing as forensic experts moved silently through the dimly lit rooms, their movements ethereal. The house had gained a reputation among the locals, a place where compasses spun erratically, where whispers of unseen eyes watching lingered. Now it held secrets far graver than mere urban legends. The initial examination indicates she's been deceased for approximately 3 days, the medical examiner murmured, his words barely audible in the heavy silence. The cause of death seems to be asphyxiation. Morgan had been discovered seated in an antique chair in the parlor, her posture serene, hands folded neatly in her lap as if in patient anticipation. There were no signs of struggle, no marks of a fight. The scene exuded a haunting stillness that unsettled even the most seasoned investigators. "Who found the body?" Lind inquired, her voice soft as she scanned her notes. "A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers," her partner replied. "They stumbled upon her sitting there, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew nearer." The house had remained uninhabited since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly 5 years prior. Legal disputes had left the property in a state of neglect, unwanted, unsold, and fading into obscurity, except for the occasional acts of vandalism and daring exploration. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into architectural anomalies for her thesis, had been described by friends as meticulous, driven, and captivated by spaces that challenged conventional norms. The allure of the abandoned Victorian, with its reputation for disorienting visitors, had undoubtedly beckoned to her curious spirit. "Her roommate reported her missing 2 days ago," Lind remarked. Morgan had mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her research. Further investigation unveiled that Morgan had frequented the house in the weeks leading up to her demise. Her journal entries chronicled strange acoustics, unexpected cold patches, and doors that seemed to morph into different pathways with each opening. In her final writings, she spoke of bringing specialized equipment to capture what she cryptically referred to as spatial incongruities. However, said equipment was nowhere to be found. During the autopsy, an unexpected revelation emerged: traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant utilized in certain shamanic rituals. While the substance was known to induce disorientation and vivid hallucinations, the levels found were insufficient to be fatal. She wasn't one to dabble in recreational substances, her boyfriend asserted during questioning. Morgan was meticulous about her research methodologies. She wouldn't have jeopardized her perceptions knowingly. Through digital forensics, fragments of deleted messages from Morgan's phone were recovered. Dialogues with an individual who shared her fascination with the house, someone who professed to comprehend its enigmatic nature. The exchanges grew increasingly intimate and enigmatic. "The house retains memories of its past," read one message. "It yearns for someone to uncover its truths." The investigation eventually led Lind and her team to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who had corresponded with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena had captivated her, and their professional relationship had evolved into something deeper. When questioned, Reeves appeared genuinely devastated by Morgan's passing. "The house holds a reputation," he divulged. "The original architect wove optical illusions and false perspectives into its design. He intended to bewilder and disorient. Morgan believed there was a deeper layer to it all, something transcending mere architectural tricks." Yet Reeves possessed a solid alibi for the presumed time of Morgan's demise. Surveillance footage depicted him delivering a lecture at a university symposium miles away. A breakthrough materialized from an unexpected source: Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, residing abroad. Contacted by the investigators, he unveiled a family secret shrouded for generations. "My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to meet their end in that house," he disclosed. "There were others, always discovered in the parlor, always wearing tranquil expressions. The family dubbed it the claiming." He shared journals spanning decades, chronicling deaths initially attributed to heart failure or strokes. The pattern was unmistakable: individuals spending considerable time within the house, ultimately succumbing to what the family euphemistically termed the influence. A secondary sweep of the property unveiled a concealed compartment behind the parlor's hearth. Within it, Morgan's missing equipment was retrieved alongside a puzzling discovery: an alcove housing artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, meticulously arranged in a geometric configuration. At the center lay a weathered figurine, its features smoothed by generations of handling. Analysis pinpointed the carving as a representation of a deity linked with liminal spaces, gateways between realms. The residue on the artifacts matched the alkaloid discovered in Morgan's system. The case took a new twist as forensic analysis of dust patterns within the house hinted at the presence of another individual during Morgan's demise. Partial fingerprints inconsistent with Morgan's or any known visitors were lifted from doorknobs throughout the residence. 3 weeks into the probe, Adam Reeves was found lifeless in his apartment. Like Morgan, he was seated facing the entrance, an air of tranquility enveloping him, the same alkaloid detected in his system. Clenched in his grasp was a key that fitted no lock within his dwelling, but slotted perfectly into the concealed compartment within the Victorian estate. In his final missive, sent to himself as a form of testament, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't ensnare you physically, it ensnares your perception." Morgan was correct: the doors guide you where they always have, yet something deceives you into believing you're retracing your steps. Once you grasp the verity, you can depart at any time, yet by then, the desire to leave eludes you. The case remains officially unresolved, labeled as suspicious deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian has since been labeled hazardous, its access restricted by authorities. Nonetheless, whispers persist of spectral lights glimpsed within its walls on certain evenings and of visitors who vanish without a trace. Some locals assert that the house claims those who delve too deeply into its mysteries. Others speculate that Morgan and Reeves unearthed something ancient and potent, a force dwelling within the interstices of conventional reality. The truth lingers as elusive as an escape route in a house where all pathways lead back to the commencement. Story 18: The Empty Apartment. The apartment had sat vacant for months, a silent witness to the passing of time. When the new tenants arrived, their expectations were modest: a layer of dust, perhaps a few forsaken pieces of furniture left behind. Yet, as they explored their new abode, one door remained stubbornly shut. It was a closet, its secrets locked away from prying eyes. After much coercion, the landlord managed to force the door open, revealing a sight that sent shivers down the spines of all who beheld it. The walls bore deep, jagged scratches, etched into the wood with a fervor bordering on desperation. And tucked away in a corner, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its battery drained except for a single unread message glowing faintly on the screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for the enigmatic, felt a chill creep down her spine as she surveyed the scene before her. It wasn't the presence of blood or overt violence that unsettled her, but rather the silent testament of those haunting scratch marks, an ominous tale of confinement and struggle. "We need forensics on site immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who was diligently documenting the eerie markings, "and gather all records of the previous tenants." The message on the forgotten phone was chilling in its simplicity: "I know what you did." The landlord, a man perpetually on edge with clammy palms, nervously recounted how the previous tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unpaid rent. A young woman kept to herself, Quiet, he muttered, his gaze skirting away from the closet. No trouble. Forensic analysis uncovered a mosaic of blood samples embedded within the scratches on the walls. Most matched a single individual, presumably the missing tenant, Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman who had mysteriously disappeared, prompting concern from her workplace. However, two DNA profiles stood out. One remained an enigma within the system, while the other belonged to a man who, according to official records, had perished in a car accident 2 years prior. The inexplicable presence of his genetic imprint in that claustrophobic space left Shaw dumbfounded. Emma's abandoned apartment revealed fragments of a life interrupted: unopened mail, a forgotten coffee mug in the sink, a neatly made bed. Phone records unveiled a pattern of regular calls with her sister, abruptly halted, replaced by a flurry of unidentified numbers in the weeks leading up to her vanishing. The sister mentioned a new boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured the shadowy figure of a man in a baseball cap trailing Emma into the building one fateful night, his features carefully concealed from the watchful gaze of security cameras. A breakthrough emerged when partial fingerprints matching the presumed deceased Derek Mercer were discovered on the closet's inner doorknob. Shaw's deductive mind pieced together a grim puzzle. Mercer had orchestrated his own demise, but for what insidious purpose? The unidentified DNA led to another missing person case, Lynette Porter, who had vanished without a trace. A neighbor's account aligned with sightings of a woman resembling Lynette frequenting Emma's residence. Following a trail of breadcrumbs, Shaw uncovered a web of deceit woven by Mercer, leading them to a secluded property owned by his family. Behind forbidding basement doors, they unearthed Lynette Porter's haunted eyes, emaciated form, a living specter of the torment Emma endured. "He forced me to witness," Lynette murmured, her voice vacant with trauma. "Said I needed to comprehend the fate of those who dared to flee." The evidence against Mercer mounted: diaries chronicling his maniacal need for dominance, photographs of women bearing striking resemblances to Emma and Lynette, and damning videos capturing Mercer's abhorrent acts. "He believed she would expose us," his voice echoed on the recordings. "No one reveals my truths." The hunt for Derek Mercer spanned jurisdictions, a shadow weaving through the fabric of society. As authorities closed in, the chilling profile of a man who thrived on inflicting anguish emerged, sending a shiver through all who pursued him. Captured at a bus terminal, Mercer exuded an eerie tranquility, his demeanor unwavering in the face of justice. "She sent that message to herself," he casually remarked of the incriminating text. "She craved discovery, but salvation eluded her." The trial laid bare the intricate tapestry of Mercer's deception, his elaborate charade of death and rebirth to stalk his prey undetected, his victims mere pawns in his twisted game. Emma's remains were never recovered, lost to the confines of that oppressive closet where she had fought against insurmountable odds. The message on the phone, a spectral whisper from beyond the grave, bore witness to her final act of defiance against her malevolent captor. The jury swiftly rendered a verdict of guilt on all counts, sealing Mercer's fate with a life sentence devoid of reprieve. A faint smile played across his lips, a cryptic gesture that hinted at a satisfaction known only to him. During the sentencing, Lynette Porter stood tall, her voice unwavering as she declared, He sought to confine us in darkness, but his own imprisonment is a beacon of light. The case reshaped investigative protocols, emphasizing the scrutiny of personal connections and rental histories in missing persons inquiries. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment as a somber memento and emblem of resilience in the face of unfathomable terror, a poignant reminder of the silent struggles endured within its confines. Story 19. The ancient box lay buried beneath layers of forgotten clutter in the attic, a silent witness to the passage of time in the old house. Amongst the dusty relics within were faded Polaroids, capturing moments of joy and togetherness from years long gone. Innocuous scenes of birthdays and family gatherings adorned the worn photographs, invoking a sense of nostalgia. Yet, as she reached the final picture, a subtle shift in the atmosphere took hold. The image depicted her own living room, the familiar furniture and decor unmistakable. However, the family captured in the photograph was not hers. Their smiles frozen in time, they exuded a warmth that contrasted sharply with the unsettling presence lurking in the background. A figure stood in the hallway, barely discernible in the dim light, watching with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. Rebecca's fingers trembled as she held the photograph, a subtle vibration causing the edges to quiver. Descending the creaking wooden stairs, she carried the unsettling image to the stark illumination of the kitchen below. Placing it on the counter, she scrutinized every detail under the harsh fluorescent light, a sense of foreboding settling upon her. The arrival of Detective Morgan heralded the beginning of an enigmatic investigation. With a weathered leather jacket and eyes that missed nothing, he approached the photograph with a solemn gravity. Running a gloved finger along its edge, he inquired about the previous owners of the house, delving into the shadows of the past. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling pattern emerged. Families had come and gone from the house, each disappearing without a trace after precisely 1 year of residency. The enigmatic Sutherland family, captured in the photograph, had left no remnants of their existence, no forwarding address, no trace of their whereabouts. Forensic analysis of the photograph revealed unsettling details, a timer used to capture the staged image, the eerie stillness of the subjects, and the ominous figure in the hallway. Enhanced imaging exposed the shadowy presence as a tall, male figure, his identity shrouded in mystery. A macabre discovery beneath the house's foundation unveiled a grim truth. The missing families, including the Sutherlands, were found buried beneath the earth, their lives frozen in time. Among their possessions lay a camera, a sinister tool used to document the lives of those who had unwittingly crossed paths with darkness. As the investigation reached its conclusion, a hidden crawlspace in the attic revealed a chilling revelation. A cot, photography equipment, and a journal filled with eerie observations painted a picture of a sinister presence lurking within the house. The final entry, a haunting declaration of intent, sent chills down Rebecca's spine. Seeking refuge in a hotel under the watchful eye of law enforcement, Rebecca found herself haunted by the specter of the past. A mysterious phone call in the dead of night, the mechanical click of a Polaroid camera, each moment a reminder of the lingering presence that refused to be forgotten. The house, now a silent sentinel of unspeakable horrors, stood empty and forbidding. The enigma of Samuel Whitfield, the elusive architect of terror, remained unresolved. As whispers of his existence echoed through the halls of law enforcement, the chilling certainty lingered that those who delved too deeply into the shadows would find themselves ensnared in a web of malevolent watchfulness. In the quiet darkness of unseen rooms, photographs developed, capturing new families, new homes, and new watchers in the shadows. The legacy of the man in the photograph endured, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the threshold of perception. And as the night stretched on, the mysteries of the house remained unsolved, its secrets guarded by unseen eyes that watched, waited, and never forgot. Story 20: The Enigma of Reflections. She cleared the mist from the mirror, gazing at her own reflection. Yet a subtle unease crept over her. Her appearance seemed unchanged, her attire familiar. Still, a sense of disquiet lingered, a fleeting movement caught in her peripheral vision, a shift that was not her own. When she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing. The enigma of Rebecca Thorne commenced with that disconcerting moment in her bathroom. What ensued would perplex investigators and haunt a community for years to come. Rebecca resided alone in a modest apartment nestled in a tranquil suburban enclave. Acquaintances portrayed her as methodical, reserved, a woman who kept to herself while maintaining amicable relations with neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a mid-sized firm defined her life by routine and precision. Nothing about her hinted that she would become the focal point of one of the most baffling criminal inquiries of the era. The initial incident appeared innocuous. Rebecca noticed minor items in her abode had been rearranged, nothing missing, merely shifted. A coffee mug placed on a different shelf, books repositioned, her toothbrush on the opposite side of the sink. She brushed off these peculiarities as lapses in memory, the natural outcome of extended hours spent scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights until her vision blurred. Detective Marion Shaw received the initial report when Rebecca, following weeks of such disturbances, finally sought assistance from authorities. The preliminary evaluation, no tangible evidence of a crime, possibly a case for mental health services rather than law enforcement. Shaw documented the grievance but consigned it to the stack of non-priority cases. There was no concrete proof, Shaw later attested. No signs of forced entry, no missing belongings, just a woman sensing something amiss in her abode. The pivotal moment arrived with the bathroom mirror incident. During her subsequent interaction with law enforcement, Rebecca recounted it vividly, how her reflection appeared to move independently, how she felt surveilled even when solitude enveloped her. This time she presented evidence, a surveillance camera she had installed herself, aimed at her front entrance. The footage unveiled something that sent a shiver down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video depicted Rebecca departing for work in the morning. Subsequently, someone identical to her used a key to access the apartment. Forensic analysts scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or digital manipulation. They found none. The individual entering mimicked Rebecca's movements, attire, even carried the same distinctive leather bag she owned. Nonetheless, according to time-stamped footage from her workplace security system, Rebecca had already swiped into her office building elsewhere in town. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously observed Miss Thorne and can imitate her with uncanny precision." The investigation escalated. Fingerprints within the apartment matched solely Rebecca's. No foreign DNA was unearthed. Neighbors reported witnessing nothing out of the ordinary, merely Rebecca traversing to and fro as usual. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, recounted greeting Rebecca upon her return home one evening and receiving no response, a deviation she found atypical but not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the disruptions in a journal. Minor alterations in her dwelling multiplied, vanishing food from her fridge she didn't recall consuming. Her computer evidenced searches she hadn't conducted. Most unsettlingly, she stumbled upon photographs on her phone's self-portraits resembling her, yet she bore no recollection of capturing them. In some images, her countenance appeared subtly awry, the smile too wide or the gaze too intense. "I feel as though I'm losing my mind," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third rendezvous. Or perhaps someone is orchestrating it to seem so. The breakthrough emerged when investigators discerned a pattern in the surveillance footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca departed for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, predetermined activities with predictable durations. "Someone possesses an intimate knowledge of your routine," Shaw expounded. "This isn't random, it's targeted observation and infiltration." A forensic psychologist proposed they were entangled in a fixation instance, a person fixated on transforming into Rebecca, inhabiting her existence, possibly supplanting her entirely. While rare, such cases had been chronicled in psychological literature. The perpetrator typically underwent a psychological rupture, fixating on a victim embodying traits they aspired to possess: stability, beauty, success, normality. The inquiry narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former coworker, Lily Winters, who had been terminated following a display of increasingly erratic conduct. Lily had collaborated closely with Rebecca, often remarking on their shared traits. Post-dismissal, she had dispatched a series of disconcerting emails to Rebecca. "We could be mirror images," one missive read. "Sometimes I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence. Their findings transformed the case from eerie to chilling. Within Lily's abode, one room had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were adorned with photographs, scores of snapshots of Rebecca entering her apartment, shopping, socializing, all taken without her knowledge. A wardrobe in the closet harbored exact duplicates of Rebecca's attires. Makeup matching Rebecca's preferred brands sat atop a vanity alongside meticulous notes regarding her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. Most damning were the practice videos. Lily had documented herself mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions. The evolution was apparent. Initial attempts were clumsy and overt, later renditions nearly indistinguishable from the genuine Rebecca. "She aspired to become me," Rebecca murmured upon witnessing the evidence. "She wasn't merely imitating me, she was obliterating me." Forensic technicians unearthed sophisticated tools for crafting key duplicates and replicating electronic access cards. Lily had upheld an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a calendar projecting her schedule with precision. What eluded investigators was Lily's ultimate objective. Journals discovered in her residence contained incoherent entries vacillating between the first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as me and her within the same paragraph. The final entry sent a shiver down investigators' spines. "Soon, only one of us shall remain. The stronger version shall prevail." Upon authorities moving to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Her residence exhibited signs of abrupt departure, drawers left ajar, certain technology absent. A nationwide alert was issued. Rebecca entered protective seclusion, relocated to a secure, undisclosed location under constant surveillance. For 3 weeks, authorities monitored every locale linked to her previous life. Lily never materialized. The case took a disquieting turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being on leave, Rebecca had been sighted entering the building. Subsequent security footage affirmed it. A figure mirroring Rebecca had accessed the premises using a valid ID card, proceeded to her former workstation, and spent 40 minutes perusing her files before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained sheltered in a secure location. The implications crystallized. Lily hadn't fled, she had made her move. She was now assuming Rebecca's identity, slipping into her existence while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains officially unresolved. Lily Winters has eluded capture. Rebecca Thorne opted not to return to her former life, opting to forge a new identity in an undisclosed sanctuary. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk, two women strikingly alike. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other is Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their features, seeking disparities, tells that would differentiate one from the other. The truly unsettling aspect Shaw often imparts to newcomers in the force is not that someone can resemble you or sound like you. It's that they yearn to inhabit your essence so fervently that they obliterate themselves in the process. Identity is not solely what we present to the world, it's what we safeguard most zealously. And at times, we only realize its worth when someone endeavors to seize it. Story 21: Secrets Within the Walls. The realtor's listing made no mention of a basement, and the blueprints revealed nothing about it. But fate has a way of revealing what is hidden. As the family peeled back the old carpet, a door emerged, concealed beneath the floor. With a collective effort, they forced the rusted handle to yield, unveiling a passage into the unknown. A musty breath of air, heavy with the scent of damp earth, enveloped them as they descended the stairs into darkness. Anticipating storage space, they were met with a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb, and there on the wall, a series of photographs, familiar faces captured within the confines of their own home. The Mercer family had sought character and history when they moved into the suburban dwelling, unaware of the sinister past that lurked within its walls. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene, where the crime unit had already cordoned off the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled as she recounted the chilling discovery beneath their home. With meticulous care, Connors directed the forensic team to document every detail of the hidden chamber before further exploration. The basement, a compact room akin to a standard bedroom, featured concrete walls painted a solemn gray. A lone chair stood anchored to the floor, beneath the stark glow of the suspended bulb. Yet it was the wall adorned with 37 photographs that held a haunting allure, each image a poignant intrusion into the Mercer family's privacy. Investigating the eerie tableau, Connors and her partner uncovered a trail of enigmatic clues. Previous owners' fingerprints lingered in the dimness, a silent testament to the house's enigmatic history. The unsettling revelation of the hidden room cast a pall over the property's shadowed past. Delving deeper, the investigation unfurled a tapestry of deceit and surveillance. Alterations in blueprints, redacted reports, and a contractor's denial of the basement's existence hinted at a clandestine force at play. The discovery of a memory card and covert audio recordings painted a portrait of an unseen voyeur, orchestrating a symphony of intrusion from the hidden recesses of the house. As the truth unfurled, a figure from the past emerged, the elusive Edward Kelvin, the house's architect who had vanished without a trace. His journal, a testament to his obsession, chronicled the lives of the unwitting families who had inhabited the dwelling. Kelvin's descent into madness revealed a man consumed by a twisted sense of ownership over those who dwelled within his creation. In a harrowing conclusion, Kelvin was apprehended, his frail form discovered nestled within the labyrinthine passages he had crafted within the walls. His distorted perception of guardianship over the house's occupants painted a chilling portrait of a man lost to his delusions, forever entwined with the structure he had molded. The Mercer family, like those before them, fled the house, leaving behind the echoes of their violated privacy. The trial that followed unveiled the extent of Kelvin's voyeuristic network, a macabre legacy etched into the very bones of the house itself. Though the property was razed and the ground reclaimed, the family's haunted by memories of unseen eyes lurking within the walls. The chilling realization that their most intimate moments had been observed in silence lingered, a specter that whispered in the quiet corners of their minds. And in the stillness of the night, they wondered if they were truly alone, or if the shadows of the past still lingered, watching, waiting. Story 22. The aged apartment possessed its idiosyncrasies, pipes that groaned, floorboards that creaked. Yet the fresh tenant discerned that what she heard was beyond the ordinary. The footsteps held a rhythm too precise, too purposeful. They descended from above, deliberate and unhurried. However, she resided on the topmost floor. One evening, summoning her courage, she tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased. A hush settled in. Then a solitary knock reverberated from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the knocking incident to herself. She convinced her mind it was merely the building settling, or perchance a small creature that had infiltrated the attic space. Despite the nightly continuation of the footsteps, she adjusted, escalating her television volume, donning headphones to bed, anything to drown out the methodical footfalls traversing her ceiling in the shadows. Detective Morris first caught wind of the apartment when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. The worker had dismantled a segment of drywall in the hallway outside Sarah's apartment to mend a water leak. Behind it, he unveiled a narrow passage that defied existence per the building blueprints. Upon illuminating the interior with his flashlight, the beam unveiled a makeshift abode: scattered food wrappers, discarded water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a small notebook. The building superintendent promptly phoned the authorities. Detective Morris arrived with his partner, Detective Rivera, to find the maintenance worker ashen and trembling. "Someone's been living in the walls," he reiterated. "Someone's been watching." The notebook held intricate observations of Sarah Coleman, her routine, her guests, her dinner choices, her preferred TV programs, her bathing times, her sleeping hours. The penmanship commenced orderly but descended into chaos towards the final pages, with peculiar symbols adorning the margins. "The subject no longer heeds my cues," the final entry read. "She has elected to disregard me. No one ignores me." Forensic teams scoured the crawlspace and uncovered fingerprints that matched no records in any database. They unearthed a labyrinth of passages integrated into the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades as per structural analysis. The passages linked to 5 distinct apartments, terminating in observation point, small apertures camouflaged as fixtures or minor damages in only one, Sarah Coleman's. The investigation team interrogated current occupants. None disclosed anything unusual beyond the customary noises of apartment life. Previous residents recounted a dissimilar narrative. 3 former tenants of Sarah's apartment recounted feeling watched or hearing unexplained movements. One had vacated after a mere fortnight. None had voiced their encounters, apprehensive they would be labeled paranoid. A breakthrough surfaced when forensics unearthed minuscule blood spatter in one of the crawl spaces. DNA testing identified it as Martin Weaver's, a former resident who had vanished inexplicably 4 years prior. His kin had filed a missing persons report, to no avail. He had resided in the apartment directly beneath Sarah's. Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance. According to neighbors, Martin had lamented about noises above his apartment. He had confronted the tenant above him at the time, a reserved man named Edward who kept to himself. Shortly after, Martin disappeared. Edward departed the ensuing month, leaving no forwarding details. Investigators traced Edward's rental history and unearthed a pattern. He had dwelled in 6 various apartment buildings over 2 decades. In each instance, he had sought top-floor units, forged minimal social bonds, and eventually absconded without notice. A neighbor from his 3rd abode recollected him as intense and recollected his frequent grievances about requiring silence. The investigators unearthed property records showcasing Edward's acquisition of remote rural land. Upon reaching the locale, they stumbled upon a cabin adorned with photos and notes, snapshots of residents from assorted apartment buildings, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver, blueprints of ventilation systems and structural vulnerabilities, elaborate diaries depicting observations of the specimens and upholding the habitat. In the cabin's core stood a corkboard adorned with newspaper clippings, missing persons reports, 6 in total, all former apartment residents from buildings where Edward had resided. Deep gouges marred the wooden floor beneath the board, as if a weighty object had been dragged incessantly. Beyond the cabin, cadaver dogs guided investigators to a freshly disturbed patch of soil. Excavation unveiled human remains, and then another burial ground, and another, as forensic anthropologists commenced the grim task of identifying the victims. Detective Morris revisited Sarah's apartment building. The crawl spaces had been sealed off, yet residents sporadically reported noises. Maintenance workers installing new security systems stumbled upon an item tucked into a corner where the ceiling met the wall in the hallway, a small notebook, newer than the initial one discovered. The first page bore a solitary line, "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The script matched the previous notebook. The ultimate page displayed a crude sketch of Sarah's apartment layout with a new passage outlined in red and a date for that night. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to find her residence deserted. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter. Her television persisted in playing. Her shower emitted steam. Within the bathroom, as the mirror's fog dissipated, a message emerged, etched by a finger on the glass. "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The manhunt for Edward endures. Authorities have identified him as Edward Mercer, former construction specialist focusing on renovations. His understanding of building structures facilitated the creation of his clandestine network of observation points and passages. Thermal imaging scans of Sarah's building divulged no indications of current habitation within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains absent. Her case has been tied to analogous disappearances spanning multiple states. Warnings have been issued to apartment building managers concerning unauthorized alterations and concealed spaces. The specter that haunts Detective Morris most is not the graves or the diaries or even the pictures of unsuspecting residents. It's the notion of Sarah, night after night, perceiving those footsteps above her in an apartment devoid of an upstairs neighbor. The footsteps that halted when she rapped and then rapped back. Sometimes during the night, alone in his abode, Detective Morris discovers himself gazing up at his ceiling, listening, awaiting, and contemplating who else might be listening too. Story 23. In a weathered apartment, the aging heating system emitted its customary groans, the pipes rattling in a familiar symphony of creaks and clatters. To the occupant, this was all part of the building's character, nothing out of the ordinary in its well-worn existence. Yet on this particular night, a subtle shift occurred. A delicate voice, barely audible but undeniably clear, drifted through the labyrinth of vents, weaving its way into her consciousness. It wasn't the usual background noise of distant conversations or household activities. This voice was different. It whispered, calling her name with an eerie allure that sent shivers down her spine. Intrigued and unnerved, she leaned in closer, pressing her ear against the cool metal grate. A sudden rush of frigid air brushed against her cheek, carrying with it a soft, almost playful message. "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself standing in the heart of the empty apartment, a solitary figure amidst the remnants of a disturbing mystery. Her unwavering gaze fixated on the rusted vent cover, forcibly removed from its place on the wall. Around her, the forensic team diligently worked, diligently documenting every detail with flashes of their cameras illuminating the shadows. The victim, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace, her absence only noticed when a lingering odor caught the attention of the building's management. What awaited them inside the ventilation system defied logical explanation. Officer Patel, his voice steady but tinged with unease, relayed the unsettling details from his notepad. Alina had voiced concerns about hearing strange voices seeping through the vents, a plea that had fallen on deaf ears as the building management dismissed her fears as mere byproducts of the ancient heating system. Shaw knelt by the vent, her keen eyes tracing the deep scratch marks etched into the metal, evidence of a desperate struggle from within. Fingernails clawing frantically, a silent cry for help trapped within the confines of the vent. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a contagious smile and a penchant for nurturing houseplants, had left behind a trail of worry and confusion in her sudden absence. Her classroom remained adorned with colorful cards crafted by her students, a poignant reminder of her absence. Her sister, haunted by the memory of Alina's growing paranoia in the days leading up to her disappearance, recounted a harrowing tale of whispered conversations and unseen eyes watching from the shadows. As Shaw delved deeper into the enigmatic case, she began to see the apartment with fresh eyes. The meticulously made bed, the untouched coffee mug in the sink, the solitary chair positioned beneath the vent as if waiting for a silent visitor. Each detail painted a picture of a life interrupted, a presence lurking just beyond the veil of perception. The forensic analysis unearthed chilling revelations, fibers entwined in the vent grill matching Alina's favorite cardigan, a foreign fingerprint adorning the inside of the vent cover, haunting echoes captured in audio recordings retrieved from Alina's phone. Alone in her car, the rain a steady rhythm on the roof, Shaw listened to the spectral whispers that had tormented Alina, each word a chilling reminder of a presence unseen yet deeply felt. A history of unsettling incidents within the building emerged as the investigation progressed. Tenants had come and gone, driven away by inexplicable phenomena, noises in the dead of night, whispers carried on the wind, a sense of being relentlessly observed. Harold Weber, the unassuming building superintendent with a demeanor as unyielding as steel, harbored a secret that lay dormant within the building's walls. During questioning, Weber's facade of indifference cracked ever so slightly when pressed about the previous occupants of apartment 4B, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, a subtle tension in his posture, a silent admission of knowledge concealed beneath a veneer of feigned ignorance. Shaw sensed the truth looming just beyond reach, a puzzle waiting to be solved. The investigation took a chilling turn as a hidden access panel was discovered in Alina's bathroom, leading to a clandestine maintenance passage snaking through the walls like a serpent. Within this hidden realm, a trove of artifacts lay in wait: a flashlight, a water bottle, food, wrappers, a haunting testament to a presence that had dwelled unseen among the building's bones. A search of Weber's meticulously ordered apartment revealed a stark contrast to the chaos that lurked within his digital archives. Files meticulously organized by apartment numbers, each containing a trove of intimate recordings and surreptitiously captured moments. Shaw's blood ran cold as she delved into the twisted mind of a predator who had made a home within the walls, a silent witness to the lives of those he watched. The revelation of a storage unit filled with mementos and relics from past tenants cemented Weber's descent into madness. treasures preserved like macabre trophies, a shrine to the twisted connections he had forged with those he had observed from the shadows. As the handcuffs closed around his wrists, Weber's serene smile held a chilling promise his whispers would echo through the building long after his physical presence had faded. The truth of Aliner's fate emerged in stark clarity, drugged, disoriented, lured into the labyrinthine depths of the ventilation system by a siren call that promised solace amidst the shadows. The families of past tenants came forward, their stories weaving a tapestry of shared fear and unease, a legacy of whispered secrets and silent terrors. As Weber's trial unfolded, the courtroom became a stage for the unveiling of a macabre symphony, a cacophony of voices silenced, a legacy of fear dismantled by the light of justice. The jury's verdict rang out with a resounding finality, guilty on all counts. Yet, as Weber was led away, his parting words lingered in the air like a haunting refrain, a reminder that the building itself held memories that transcended time. Now the apartment building stands as a hollow shell of its former self, a testament to the darkness that once dwelled within its walls. Despite the fade of renovation and renewal, whispers still echo through the vents, a spectral reminder of lives intertwined and severed by the hand of a predator unseen. The groans of the heating system, the rattling of pipes, it's all part of the building's legacy, a silent witness to the whispers that linger in the night, waiting to be heard once more. Story 24. The parcel arrived mysteriously, devoid of any traces that could lead back to its origin. No return label, no tracking number, just a plain cardboard box, its edges slightly damp from the morning dew. It was not intended for Sarah Miller. Her address was correct, but the name inscribed on the parcel was unfamiliar. She hesitated, tempted to simply disregard it, to leave it untouched on her doorstep. Yet curiosity beckoned her, whispering of secrets waiting to be unveiled. With a sense of trepidation, she tore open the box, anticipating mundane contents like books or clothing. Instead, nestled within was a VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing two simple words, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic tape in her hands, its weight feeling oddly substantial, as if it carried the weight of forbidden knowledge. Her fingertips traced the worn edges of the cassette, sensing the history embedded in its plastic casing. The handwritten note bore the imprints of urgency, each stroke of the pen exuding a sense of haste. Meanwhile, the world outside her home continued its usual rhythms, the distant bark of a dog, the laughter of children playing in the neighborhood, the steady hum of a lawnmower cutting through the morning stillness. Unbeknownst to the ordinary existence surrounding her, something extraordinary had just been delivered to Sarah's doorstep. Bringing the enigmatic package inside, she placed it on her kitchen counter, uncertainty gnawing at her thoughts. The name on the box, Daniel Whitaker, held no significance in her world. Having resided in her house for nearly 4 years, she had never encountered mail addressed to someone by that name. The previous occupants, the Johnsons, had bid farewell to this residence, seeking closer proximity to their grandchildren. Curiosity warred with unease within Sarah as her gaze flickered towards the outdated VCR, a relic of nostalgia she rarely used. There was an inexplicable allure to the tape, a mystery shrouded in the worn black plastic casing. Against the better judgment that urged her to refrain, Sarah inserted the tape into the VCR. Initially, static danced on the screen, gradually sharpening into a discernible image. A dimly lit room materialized, illuminated by a single lamp casting elongated shadows. The camera angle seemed hurried, as if hastily positioned. A man sat in a wooden chair, his features initially obscured by darkness. "My name is Daniel Whitaker." His voice resonated quietly but resolutely through the speakers. If you're watching this, someone has discovered you, and that means they will find me as well. Leaning forward, he revealed a countenance etched with weariness and perpetual vigilance, sunken eyes, unkempt hair, the telltale signs of sleepless nights. I am innocent of her murder, you must believe me. They planted evidence against me, my fingerprints, my DNA, though I never laid a hand on her. The camera trembled slightly as Daniel readjusted it, offering glimpses of the sparse room's barren walls and minimal furnishings, a temporary sanctuary for one prepared to flee at a moment's notice. They orchestrated everything. The official narrative will claim I knew her, that we quarreled, that witnesses heard our altercation. None of it holds truth. I first laid eyes on Catherine Walsh when her face graced the news. His voice wavered, lifeless, slain within her own abode. And yet my DNA inexplicably littered the crime scene. In her office, Detective Eliza Ramirez scrutinized the identical VHS tape resting on her desk, the fifth one to surface, each bearing Daniel Whitaker's urgent plea. Officially deemed the prime suspect in Catherine Walsh's homicide, Whitaker had vanished without a trace upon the discovery of her lifeless form. Initially, the Walsh case had appeared straightforward, a young professional woman strangled in her own bedroom. No signs of forced entry, indications of a struggle, and DNA evidence unequivocally pointing towards Whitaker, whose fingerprints were already catalogued in the system from a minor transgression years prior. Eyewitnesses reported sightings of a man matching his description lingering near her residence in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. Cell phone records placed him in the vicinity on the fateful night. However, the arrival of the tapes introduced a complicating factor to the investigation. Detective Ramirez, her brow furrowed in contemplation, pondered the tape's significance. Was Whitaker executing an intricate ruse or unveiling a darker truth veiled from the light of justice? Surveying the evidence board adorned with snapshots of Catherine Walsh's vivacious smile, harrowing crime scene images, maps charting the tape recipients' locations, and at the heart, Daniel Whitaker's somber driver's license photograph, Ramirez sensed a labyrinth of deceit awaiting untangling. A revelation surfaced when Ramirez unearthed Catherine Walsh's involvement in a whistleblower case against her employer, Pharmacorp, a formidable pharmaceutical entity entwined with governmental contracts. Walsh had stumbled upon discrepancies within their clinical trial data, unearthing evidence of concealed side effects in a hastily approved drug. She intended to testify. A former colleague divulged in hushed tones to Ramirez during an interview, casting furtive glances towards the exit. Catherine possessed incriminating documents, proof of executive complicity in burying critical information. The trial was slated for the coming week. Ramirez began to discern peculiar incongruities within the evidence. The DNA traces seemed meticulously placed, diverging from logical crime scene patterns. Eyewitness accounts of Whitaker's interactions with Walsh echoed with rehearsed precision across multiple testimonies. Most disconcerting of all, surveillance footage from adjacent establishments inexplicably corrupted during the time frame encompassing the murder. 3 days following the initial tape's delivery, Sarah Miller received a subsequent package. This time, it harbored a trove of incriminating documents, clinical trial reports, internal correspondences, email transcripts, each bearing Catherine Walsh's digital imprimatur, all emanating from Pharmacorp, all affirming Walsh's righteous cause. The momentum of the investigation shifted, propelling Detective Ramirez into a collaborative effort with the other tape recipients, piecing together Whitaker's breadcrumb trail. He had served in IT security for a contractor servicing Pharmacorp systems, never having crossed paths with Catherine, but intercepting her name flagged within an anomalous security protocol beyond his purview. They had her under surveillance, Whitaker elucidated in a subsequent tape that surfaced. I stumbled upon the surveillance directives within the system. They were aware she was amassing evidence, and then I discovered myself locked out of the network. The subsequent day, she was deceased, and inexplicably I was cast as the perpetrator. A breakthrough emerged when Sarah Miller discerned a crucial detail overlooked by others in her copy of the tape. A reflection captured in a window behind Whitaker unveiled a lineup of storage units. Collaborating with Detective Ramirez, they pinpointed the location. Within Unit 217, they unearthed a cache of evidence, Whitaker's meticulous journal chronicling the conspiracy, Walsh's original incriminating files, and most damning of all, detailed strategies outlining Whitaker's framing. Inscribed in the handwriting of PharmaCorp's head of security, a former law enforcement officer endowed with access to evidence handling procedures. Justice did not arrive in a blaze of glory, but through the steady aggregation of incontrovertible evidence defying denial. 3 corporate executives faced indictments, while the head of security confessed, securing a plea deal to provide testimony against his superiors. The tainted drug was withdrawn from consideration for market release. Emerging from seclusion, Daniel Whitaker bore the scars of his fugitive existence, a stark transformation wrought by his tribulations. Though the charges against him were dropped, the ordeal had irrevocably altered his essence. In a fleeting encounter on her porch, Sarah Miller engaged in a conversation with Whitaker, who had arrived to reclaim his tape, the same spot where the enigmatic package had materialized initially. "Why me?" she ventured. "Why was it sent to my address?" His gaze, burdened with weariness, met hers. "The algorithm selected you. I required individuals devoid of any ties to Catherine or myself, individuals beyond their surveillance scope. Individuals who might yet retain faith in their own discernment amidst the deluge of accusations branding me a criminal." The erstwhile suspect and the inadvertent witness lingered in a shared silence, contemplating the tenuous boundary differentiating justice from a meticulously constructed falsehood. Sarah eventually articulated, "The misdirected parcel turned out to be precisely the correct one." The VHS tapes were catalogued as evidence, tangible relics underscoring the notion that truth occasionally arrives veiled in unexpected packages, bearing unfamiliar appellations, awaiting the audacity of the curious to delve within. Story 25. The old library faced its final chapter as demolition loomed. The workers toiled, nearing the end when a curious twist of fate intervened. Amidst the dust and debris, a laborer stumbled upon a hidden latch nestled within the ancient bookshelf. With a gentle click, the facade of the shelf swung open, unveiling a clandestine passage leading to a chamber long forgotten. The air within hung heavy, a time capsule untouched for decades. No relics or furnishings adorned the space, save for a solitary chair firmly bolted to the worn floorboards. Etched repeatedly on the walls, a haunting message echoed in the dim light, "I am still here." The foreman, sensing unease, swiftly summoned the authorities. What began as routine demolition swiftly unraveled into a tapestry of mystery and shadows. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator cloaked in the enigma of countless crime scenes, stood at the threshold of the hidden chamber. His flashlight pierced the darkness, casting stark beams upon the chilling words scrawled across the walls. "Secure the scene," Walsh's command reverberated in the confined space. "Let no one disturb the truth until forensics untangles its secrets." The library's past whispered of the Harringtons, a family woven into the fabric of the community. Once stewards of knowledge, they had bequeathed the building to the public following the enigmatic disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. vanished without a trace during her final days of academia, leaving behind naught but an abandoned car near the silent woods. The case, a riddle unsolved despite exhaustive searches and inquiries, lingered as a ghostly specter in the family's lineage. A tale of a daughter lost, a mystery unsolved. As forensic artisans meticulously combed the hidden chamber, they unearthed relics of a dark past. Strands of hair and fibers intertwined with the aged leather of the chair. The walls, scarred with the frantic etchings, whispered of a struggle long forgotten. Traces of blood and skin cells, concealed beneath layers of neglect, painted a grim portrait of captivity. Walsh, compelled by the tendrils of history, delved deeper into the Harrington saga. The timing of the library's donation, a mere breath after Rebecca's disappearance, tugged at his instincts. A contractor loyal to the family's patriarch Maxwell Harrington had crafted the bookshelf concealing the hidden chamber. Financial ledgers whispered of transactions shrouded in secrecy, payments straying far beyond the boundaries of normalcy. Interrogations of former library staff unveiled a tale of shadows. Maxwell, a recluse of the night, had guarded the secret chamber with fierce devotion. His insistence on preserving that section, a facade of historical reverence masking darker truths, a tale of obsession veiled in the guise of preservation. The puzzle pieces aligned as forensic revelations intertwined with the threads of the past. The DNA, a silent witness, sealed Rebecca's fate within the hidden room, a captive of blood bound by the shackles of kinship. With warrant in hand, detectives stormed the Harrington estate. In Maxwell's inner sanctum, a journal concealed in shadows unveiled the darkness within. A tale of possession, of obsession woven into each inked confession. The final entry, a chilling epitaph, she threatened to unveil the truth. The room will silence her cries. Confronted with the damning evidence, Maxwell's facade crumbled. Confession, a bitter draught of truth, spilled forth. Rebecca, a threat to his empire of lies, had met her end in the hidden chamber. A life extinguished by fear, buried beneath the weight of secrets. Beneath the chamber's floor, the earth yielded its grim harvest. Rebecca's remains, a silent witness clad in the silver bracelet of youth, emerged from their clandestine grave. The Harringtons, silent sentinels of a shattered dynasty, bore witness to justice's final reckoning. The library, once slated for oblivion, became a shrine of remembrance. Flowers, whispers of solace, adorned its threshold, a tribute to a life cut short, a truth unveiled in the dying embers of the past. In the end, it was Rebecca's whispered plea, "I am still here," that echoed through the corridors of time, ensuring her legacy endured in the gentle embrace of a slumbering world. Story 26, The Unseen Observer. She never fancied venturing up there, but when the storm stirred a leak in the roof, she had no choice. The attic loomed with forgotten treasures, cloaked in dust and cobwebs. Nestled in the distant shadows, an ancient dollhouse awaited, intricately detailed, its minuscule furnishings meticulously arranged. Yet as she gazed inside, a knot twisted in her stomach. The figures within were not mere dolls. They were tiny, expertly carved replicas of her own kin. Each figure meticulously placed, mirroring their positions downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to represent her stood by the attic threshold. Rebecca Morgan traced her finger along the dollhouse's roof, sensing the groove where the small wooden figure stood. A shiver coursed through her, unrelated to the icy draft whispering through the rafters. The dollhouse had no place there. This wasn't her childhood abode, but a rented dwelling the family had recently settled into. The saga commenced with Rebecca's frantic plea to law enforcement. Officers descended upon the suburban abode to find a distressed family, gathered in the living room, hesitant to ascend the stairs. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their distress as a prank or the imaginings of newcomers to an unfamiliar home. "The meticulousness struck me," Detective Harmon later recounted. "Each tiny figurine captured a distinct trait of every family member: the father's receding hairline, the son's favored hoodie, even the mother's minute birthmark." The probe took a turn when forensic teams uncovered fingerprints on the dollhouse belonging to none of the family members. More unsettling were microscopic cameras ensconced in the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated surveillance system concealed beneath the dollhouse itself. Scrutiny of the Morgan family's movements in the preceding days unveiled a disquieting pattern. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse not only mirrored the family's evening whereabouts, but exact stances from different days, implying a prolonged observation to learn their routines. "We realized this wasn't mere stalking," elucidated Detective Harmon. "The perpetrator exhibited an obsessive dedication seldom seen in the annals of criminal psychology." The unveiling of a concealed basement entrance tucked behind a false pantry wall puzzled investigators. Inside, signs indicated someone had been dwelling there before the Morgans arrived. Food remnants, water vessels, and a sleeping bag hinted that the intruder had lived beneath the family for weeks. What confounded investigators most was the absence of forced entry. Property records divulged the house had remained vacant for nearly a year before the Morgans' arrival, following the demise of the elderly prior owners. Interviews with neighbors yielded scant information. Most noticed nothing amiss, though one elderly resident mentioned sporadic lights in the house during its vacancy. "I assumed it was the real estate folks showcasing the property," she informed investigators. "Never crossed my mind that someone might be residing there unlawfully." The breakthrough emerged through digital forensics. Examination of the surveillance system connected to the miniature cameras led investigators to an external server via an IP address. The trail led to a modest apartment across town, where walls were adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and former house occupants. Diary entries meticulously chronicled each family member's daily routines. The most unsettling find was a workshop brimming with half-finished dollhouses, each representing various homes in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, son of the previous homeowners. Financial records unveiled mounting debts following his parents' demise. Instead of selling the house, he fashioned a covert living space, lingering there while renting the property to unwitting tenants. The dollhouse served as his command center, expounded the forensic psychologist on the case. Each figure symbolized someone he monitored. Rebecca by the attic door wasn't a menace, it was his way of acknowledging her discovery of his surveillance. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed as he elucidated his motives. "They resided in my house, slumbering in my parents' chamber. I needed assurance they treated it with reverence. In regard to the positioned figures, he simply stated, I wanted them to realize I was ever watchful." Psychological evaluation unveiled a convoluted case of possessive delusion. Unable to cope with losing his childhood abode, Wells devised an intricate system to retain dominance over it. The dollhouse became his medium to possess both the property and its inhabitants. The Morgan family never set foot in the house again. Rebecca later reflected that the most harrowing moment wasn't discovering the dollhouse, but comprehending its implications. Someone had been observing us all along, measuring our lives, molding us into playthings. The true horror wasn't the dollhouse itself, it was grasping that in his mind we were mere dolls to be manipulated and observed. Wells faced multiple charges of stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and trespassing. The case spurred a reevaluation of real estate disclosure laws concerning property deaths and agents' responsibility to ensure homes are vacated appropriately before new tenants arrive. During sentencing, the judge highlighted the extraordinary violation endured by the Morgan family. You didn't merely trespass their home, you intruded upon their sense of security and self-rule. You witnessed their most intimate moments and replicated them for your amusement. What unsettles criminologists most about this case is how long Wells might have persisted undetected had Rebecca not stumbled upon the dollhouse. Examination of his diaries hinted he had been clandestinely residing in homes for nearly 2 years, transitioning from one property to another, crafting dollhouses for each observed family. The Morgan family eventually found solace in a new abode far from the haunting memories. Yet Rebecca confessed in her impact statement that she still checks closets and hidden corners habitually. All dollhouses and miniatures were banished from their new sanctuary. At times, I feel as though I'm under scrutiny, she confided. I ponder if somewhere, someone is still manipulating a miniature version of me in a dollhouse I've yet to uncover. Story 27, The Mystery of Whispering House. She felt the urge to change the nursery's color before the baby's arrival. The faded blue walls seemed to hold secrets, stories from years past within their layers. As she applied the first coat of white paint, a hidden message slowly emerged from beneath the surface, barely visible at first, then becoming sharper and clearer. Don't let it hear you. Her heart skipped a beat. Stepping back, she noticed tiny handprints in the fresh paint, placed too high for any child to reach. This discovery in the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the start of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had bought the Victorian-style home for a suspiciously low price, unaware of its dark history. Detective Sarah Klein, notebook in hand, rang the doorbell. A pregnant woman, her belly prominent under paint-splattered overalls, answered. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, a sign of sleepless nights. She trembled as she recounted finding the message and handprints. The previous owners left suddenly, she explained. Neighbors mentioned they fled in the dead of night, packing only essentials in their car, no moving truck in sight. Walking through the historic home, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed on the creaky floorboards. In the nursery, she examined the partially painted wall where the message and handprints still lingered. Nearby, 5 small handprints in wet paint, positioned at an adult's shoulder height, added to the eerie atmosphere. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into records on the property. The house had changed owners 8 times in 30 years, a remarkably high turnover rate. Each family had stayed for less than 2 years. More concerning were the child welfare reports from 3 of those families, citing children hearing whispers and feeling watched while asleep. Further investigation revealed that the house once belonged to Eleanor Blackwood, a wealthy widow who ran a small orphanage on the premises during the early industrial era. 5 children under her care had vanished without a trace. When Eleanor passed away, workers renovating the house uncovered a sealed room behind the nursery wall. Inside were children's belongings, but no remains were found. Interviewing former residents, Detective Klein uncovered a pattern of eerie incidents reported by families with children living in the house. Toys moving on their own, laughter in empty hallways, and mysterious drawings appearing on walls, all dismissed as imagination until the ominous messages appeared during repainting. Forensic analysis connected the writing to Eleanor's journals, and the handprints, identical in size and placement over decades, suggested a chilling continuity despite different children living in the home. The investigation took a grim turn when the detective obtained permission from the current owners to scan the basement with ground-penetrating radar. Anomalies were detected beneath the concrete floor, 5 child-sized shapes. Breaking through the concrete revealed a horrifying truth: 5 sets of remains arranged in a circle, confirming the children's fate during Aliner's time. Luminol sprayed in the nursery revealed countless handprints glowing in the darkness, unseen to the naked eye. Aliner's journals outlined her twisted belief that orphaned children held special energy she could exploit to prolong her life. The children, desperate to be heard, had left warnings on the walls, hoping for justice. The case concluded with a proper burial for the victims, finally acknowledging them as murder victims, not runaways. The house remained empty, the pregnant couple refusing to return, haunted by the horrors uncovered. Detective Klein's final report included eerie photographs of the luminol handprints and the hidden message under the paint. Despite justice for the victims, an inexplicable presence lingered in the house, reaching out through layers of time and paint. The nursery walls were demolished, but workers reported hearing children's whispers from within the debris, refusing to return after their shifts ended. The house was condemned, a cold case lingering in dusty files, a reminder that some crimes leave indelible marks beyond the reach of fresh paint. Detective Klein kept a haunting photograph from the case: 5 glowing handprints in the darkness, a chilling reminder of the mysteries that endure beyond closure.